That's right. It's that time of the year again. And that time of the year. Why is it raining in California? What the fuck? What the fuck, chat? I'm missing an arm. What is happening? There we go. How's it going, chat? Welcome. That's right. Dun, 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 dun. La la la. Right. That's right, chat. That's right. We made it. Monday. Another fucking Monday. That's right. It's another goddamn fucking Monday. That's right. It is raining in the great state of California. That's right. What happened? I just needed to jack my audio a little bit. I realized I was listening in my car and there wasn't enough jack, if you know what I mean, to my audio. There wasn't enough. It was like this. Hi guys, how you doing? Nah, man. Nah, it needs to be up here, bro. Yeah. Look at that juicy compressor. Oh, the denoiser. Okay, we'll see. That's actually bad. You hear that? Yeah, I do too. God damn it. So hard. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, chat. Okay. There we go. Somewhere around there. Something like that. All right. Got the news coming up, as usual.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
There we go.
Two missiles hit a U.S. Navy vessel in the Strait of Hormuz earlier today after it ignored warnings from Iran's Revolutionary Guard to halt. That's according to Iranian.
Sorry. What happened? That's great. That's just great. Now our soldiers are gonna fucking die. Because of this fuckface.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report.
More dead soldiers, folks. More dead soldiers. Yeah, it's like, okay, now let's go for some more dead soldiers. Why don't we just continue to sit around on the Gulf and get hit? Oh, no. It's going to be fine.
A U.S. Navy vessel in the Strait of Hormuz earlier today after it ignored warnings from Iran's Revolutionary Guard to halt. That's according to Iranian state media. The U.S. is denying it. Iran says the strike came as President Trump announced the U.S. will begin guiding ships through the Strait of Hormuz starting today, deploying guided missile destroyers, more than 100 aircraft and 15,000 U.S. service members. Tehran immediately rejected the move. A senior Iranian official warned any U.S. interference in the strait would be considered a ceasefire violation. President Trump said he'd reviewed Iran's 14-point peace proposal, but warned the U.S. could resume.
What do you mean, dude?
Strikes. Iran's foreign minister said a deal was just inches away, but accused U.S. negotiators of making maximalist demands. No further talks have been scheduled.
Inches away.
At least 2 other vessels were also struck in the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend, though all crew members were reported safe. Meanwhile, U.S. gas prices have now reached $4.45 a gallon, up nearly 50% since the war began.
Literally, probably Sacramento. $6.
According to Iran's Ministry of Health, U.S.-Israeli strikes have killed at least 3,375 people, including 376 children.
Nice.
The U.S. military has confirmed 13 combat deaths and 381 service members wounded. In Washington, D.C., an anti-war protester climbed the Frederick Douglass Bridge to protest the U.S. war in Iran, pitching a tent for 3 days. This is President Trump speaking in Florida Friday.
We get the radical left to say, we're not winning. We're not winning. They don't have any military left. It's unbelievable. It's actually, I believe it's treasonous. Okay, you want to know the truth? It's treasonous.
Israel's military issued new forced displacement orders this weekend for more than 10 towns and villages in southern Lebanon,
what do you mean
including areas north of Litani River, beyond its current zone of occupation. Israeli attacks killed at least 41 people Saturday, despite a ceasefire that's been in place since mid-April. Israel claims its attacks target Hezbollah, but many of the dead were civilians. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, Israel's killed 2,659 people since March 2nd. More than 1 million people, roughly a fifth of Lebanon's population, have been displaced. 2 members of a Gaza-bound humanitarian aid flotilla have appeared before an Israeli court after they say they were abducted from their ships in international waters and brought to Israel for interrogation. On Sunday, the court extended the imprisonment of Spanish national Saif Abu Keshek and Brazilian national Tiago Avila by 2 days, though authorities have not brought any charges against them. Avila told his lawyers he'd been subjected to extreme brutality after his abduction, including being, quote, dragged face down across the floor and beaten so severely he passed out twice, unquote. The beating left him with visible bruises on his face. Both Avila and Keshek have begun a hunger strike. This is their lawyer, Hadil Abu Saleh.
It's important in the beginning to note that both of them were subjected to torture and violence since the moment they were abducted by the Israeli Navy. They were kept handcuffed and blindfolded since Thursday morning until they were moved to the authority of the Israeli Prison Authority.
Wow.
Today, in the court hearing, the Shabak claimed that they are accusing them of being affiliated with a terrorist organization, of helping enemy during wartime, and giving services to a terrorist organization.
Avila and Keshek were among about 175 activists forced off their ships at gunpoint following the Israeli raid on the flotilla as it sailed off the coast of Greece last Thursday. We'll have more on the global Samud flotilla and its efforts to break Israel's siege of Gaza later in the broadcast. The Trump administration announced Friday it's withdrawing 5,000 troops from its bases in Germany. The withdrawal will reduce the number of U.S. troops stationed there by about 14%, reversing a buildup that began under President Biden following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine 4 years ago. This comes after President Trump insulted German Chancellor Friedrich Merz as a totally ineffective leader who, quote, doesn't know what he's talking about, following the chancellor's comment that the United States had no exit plan from its war against Iran and had been humiliated by Iran's leaders.
Yeah.
Sunday marked World Press Freedom Day. Reporters Without Borders released its 2026 World Press Freedom Index, calling it the bleakest in the organization's 25-year history. For the first time, more than half the world's countries fall into the difficult or very serious categories for press freedom. More than 220 journalists have been killed in Gaza by the Israeli army since October 2023, including at least 70 killed while actively carrying out their journalistic work, making the Israeli army the biggest killer of journalists in the world. The United States has fallen 7 places to 64th. As Reporters Without Borders says, President Trump has turned his hostility toward the press into a systematic policy. The report cites the Trump administration's detention and deportation of journalists and sweeping cuts to the U.S. Agency for Global Media. So far this year, 13 journalists have been killed worldwide, while 471 are currently detained and at least 21 are held hostage. President Trump signed an executive order Friday broadening U.S. sanctions against the Cuban government. The new sanctions target officials, entities, and anyone complicit in corruption or human rights violations, as well as people operating in Cuba's energy, defense, mining, and financial sectors. Foreign banks and companies that do business with sanctioned Cuban entities could also be cut off from U.S. markets. The new measures come after the Trump administration halted Venezuelan oil exports to Cuba earlier this year and pressured Mexico to stop shipments, contributing to major blackouts in Cuba and prompting foreign airlines to suspend flights to the island. This is Cuba's president, Miguel Díaz-Canel.
When we say we are an extraordinary and unusual threat to the United States, and we are sure that is not how the American people feel, but rather how the U.S. government feels, or the pretext that the U.S. government uses to attack us, one has to ask, what is the threat? What is extraordinary about that threat? What is unusual about that threat when Cuba is a country of peace?
The Trump administration reports another person has died in ICE custody, the 13th such death so far this year. Immigration and Customs Enforcement says 33-year-old Cuban immigrant Denny Adan Gonzalez was found unresponsive in his cell at the for-profit Stewart Detention Center in Lumpkin, Georgia, last Tuesday. ICE claimed the cause of death is a suspected suicide. In California, a federal grand jury has indicted a Salvadoran man who was shot by ICE agents in Patterson, California in April. Carlos Ivan Mendoza Hernandez underwent several surgeries from multiple gunshot wounds, including to the jaw, after ICE agents surrounded his car during a traffic stop, drew their weapons, and fired on him as he attempted to drive away. Prosecutors accused Hernandez of hitting federal agents with his vehicle as they tried to arrest him. Hernandez says he feared the officers were going to shoot him. Here in New York, police officers arrested 8 people Sunday as they protested the violent arrest by federal agents of a Nigerian man accused of overstaying a tourist visa. About 200 protesters gathered outside Wyckoff Heights Medical Center in Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood to confront ICE officers who were filmed dragging the man handcuffed out of a hospital to a waiting car. He'd been hospitalized after his violent arrest by ICE earlier in the evening. Activists were arrested as they tried to block the ICE vehicle from leaving the ambulance bay. In Arizona, construction crews building President Trump's expanded border wall have razed a portion of a Native American archaeological site in the Sonoran Desert, estimated to be at least 1,000 years old. The Washington Post reports bulldozers caused extensive damage to the 280 by 50-foot etching in the desert sand known as an intaglio, which holds special significance for the Hetched Odom people. In a statement, Arizona Congressmember Adelita Grijalva said, quote, "Unfortunately, this is not the first time a sacred site has been desecrated by border wall construction, and it will not be the last until the federal government takes its legal obligation to tribal consultation and following environmental laws seriously." The FBI multiplied the number of employees assigned to immigration enforcement by a factor of 23 in the first 9 months of the second Trump administration, with over a quarter of staff assigned to assist on immigration-related matters. That's according to The Intercept, which reports more than 6,500 FBI agents were diverted to immigration enforcement cases between Trump's inauguration and last September. The shift has taken agents away from criminal probes, including investigations of child sexual exploitation, sex trafficking, counterterrorism, corporate fraud, and white-collar crimes. A federal appeals court Friday blocked the mailing of the abortion pill mifepristone, restricting access to one of the most common means of abortion in the U.S. Since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, mail-order prescriptions have become the major way abortions are provided, including in states where bans are in place. The two manufacturers of mifepristone rushed to the Supreme Court Saturday, asking the justices to immediately block the ruling. In a statement, Planned Parenthood Action Fund President and CEO Alexis McGill Johnson said, quote, "The fight is on. Planned Parenthood will continue to make clear that mifepristone should be accessible because it's safe, effective, full stop." We'll have more on this story after headlines. The Republican governors of Tennessee and Alabama called state lawmakers into special sessions on Friday to redraw congressional maps in the wake of the Supreme Court's decision gutting the Voting Rights Act. In Tennessee, President Trump personally urged Republican Governor Bill Lee to redraw the state's map to give Republicans one extra seat. In Alabama, Governor Kay Ivey is moving to restore a map that would eliminate one of the state's two Democratic-held districts. Meanwhile, legislators in Mississippi are also planning a special session to redraw districts. Florida's already moved to redraw its maps to give Republicans up to 4 more seats.
Great.
Louisiana has also suspended its primary elections as it prepares to draw a new congressional map. And hundreds of labor groups across the United States organized an economic blackout Friday, calling for no school, no work, no shopping on International Workers' Day. The May Day Strong Coalition says millions of workers, students, and families joined over 5,000 actions May 1st. Here in New York, protesters took to the streets demanding union rights, higher wages, progressive taxation, and the protection of immigrant rights. Joining the protests was Zoran Mamdani, who became the first New York City mayor to address a May Day rally since Fiorella LaGuardia almost a century ago. This is Justin Lashley Maloney, an overnight concierge and a member of SEIU Local 32BJ.
We just won our contract last month, the residential contract, and it's proof that solidarity is power. So today we're out with our immigrant family, because most of our union of 32BJ, we're a majority immigrants. So we're here to support them and tell the world that we're not going to take the abuse from ICE. And all workers today on May Day standing together.
And those are some
right.
of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news apps.
Hello? Jesus. What the fuck? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exposed. Cat hole.
They want to find out about the UFOs and anything having to do with UFO or related material, and we're going to be releasing a lot of things that we have, and I think some of it's going to be very interesting to people.
Many historic developments in a story that I've been working on for 5 years, but our next guest has been working on for much longer. So let's start here. My interest was piqued when Barack Obama said this in 2021.
When it comes to aliens, there's some things I just can't tell you on air.
I was so curious about that, so I asked the only man I knew at the time who could possibly help.
President Obama says that there is footage and records of objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you.
Not very helpful, Joe. I haven't had a chance to ask Barack Obama, and it had been eating at me, and then he said something else.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51.
If the last president couldn't help us with
shit.
answers about aliens, maybe this one could. Spoiler alert, he did.
Sorry, boys.
Barack Obama said that aliens are real. Have you seen any evidence of non-human visitors to Earth?
Well, he gave classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. You know?
So aliens are real.
Well, I don't know if they're real or not. I can tell you he gave classified information.
Jeremy Corbell is an investigative journalist and the co-host of the Weaponized podcast. He knows more about this than anybody, and the new movie about him, Sleeping Dog and UFO Disclosure, is excellent. I watched it yesterday. Jeremy, there are 46 videos that Congress wants the Pentagon to declassify. The Pentagon missed the deadline to do it. But will these 46 videos be convincing enough to have Americans saying, I have no doubts aliens have visited Earth?
You know, I think that these are data points. I think these 46 videos are really important. I think the American public should be able to see them, and so does Congress. They specifically identified these 46 videos because they know that these videos exist. They are designated UAP by our own military and intelligence services. I have been exposed to a number of these. In fact, George Knapp and I provided that list to Congress. We've actually released some of those videos. So the American public is ready for this. Now, what it's going to tell us, what the end result is going to be, it's another data set of footage the American public can look at. But here is what I know for fact, Peter. There are machines, there are craft of unknown origin that fly with impunity in our restricted airspace, and our government has been assessing this as a national threat for decades. The jig is up. People now know UAP are real. But what are UAP? Who are flying these machines? Who made these machines that can outpace, outmaneuver, and outperform our greatest war fighters? That's the question.
And so you were just talking about this. We've got video that we can put up on the screen. One of the videos that your sources helped you guys get out of a government vault. It is a UAP over Syria in 2021 flying at an impossible speed, demonstrating instantaneous acceleration. This is the video. A lot of people will look at this and say, well, it could be China, it could be Russia, it could be somebody else. But when you see this and the other videos, some of the 45 other videos that you have seen, what do you think?
Yeah, look, we do not have the capability, unfortunately, for instantaneous motion. The idea of inertial effect and what would happen, this is baffling to the intelligence community. What George and I put out, it is their analysis that this is demonstrating, this craft, which is not aerodynamic. When you look at this video, it instantaneously shoots off to the right once the Reaper drone got a weapons grade lock on it. So its ability to maneuver is far beyond anything that China, Russia, or the US has. Look, this is a known secret on the inside. It's an open secret that UAP are real and that they're able to evade sometimes detection, but absolutely our weaponry. And it's an issue because they are oftentimes loitering over sensitive critical infrastructure within the United States. This is not me saying this. This has been admitted by our own administration and government. I think we're closer than ever. The intent is to bring the truth forward to the American public. We are closer than ever, and it's just got to be done now.
And my last question, we have 2 minutes left in the show. You've reported that some of these UFO files for generations have been kept secret even from sitting presidents. Who would have the power in this country to decide, if not the president, that the American people don't have a right to know about something so important like UFOs?
Right. This is game changing, and it's nature itself. It's not something that should be held back.
Yeah, and
presidents
all the other
have admitted they have been held
too.
out from that information. Very famously, President Clinton talked about that. Not the first time he said a president's been lied to. Well, now the pressure is on. Congress is asking for these 46 videos. And if we've ever had an administration and a president that sees the public interest and would enact upon that for the people, it would be this sitting president. So I'm very encouraged at this moment. We have an opportunity. None of these have really been announcements. It's an opportunity now for the American public to understand the UFO presence is real and that it's been going on a long time, and has been of national security concern.
And we have less than a minute left in the show, but we asked our audience if they had questions for you, and Lena sent one in. She wants to know, are they, presumably aliens, walking around right now and we don't know it?
Yeah, so if we don't get past the first question, we don't get past the first acknowledgement, we're never going to know the interaction that whoever these pilots are of these craft of unknown origin that they believe do not originate here on Earth. If we don't get past that first question, we're never going to be able to answer that question.
Well, we've been trying to make this happen for a long time. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here. This is a story that we will keep asking about at the highest levels of government. So thank you.
Yeah, I encourage people to watch the film Sleeping Dog that's coming out because it does dive into investigative journalism on this, how much progress we've made.
And we will watch. That's all we got. I'm Peter Ducey in Washington. See you next time.
All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with Me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.
How old was this?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. As always, thanks for spending some time with us. Well, it's May Day. Did you celebrate? Well, it means it's another excuse for the left to agitate against Trump, against America, and generally to make total fools of themselves.
86, 47, 86, 47.
86, 47. You heard it. Yeah, that's mob talk. Remember the James Comey seashells? Meaning, take out the president. You know what I mean when I say take out. So if you ask, do any of these people work? Well, first of all, a lot of them are quite old, but Remember, protesting is
None of
their
them
work.
work,
It's their
famously.
play. It's their retirement. It's their life's mission. Because a lot of these people yearn for the old days, for the Marxist communist marches that had some juice, like back in 1971.
On April 24th, 1971, the National Peace Action Coalition, supported by welfare rights groups, labor unions, and others, held a massive demonstration in Washington, D.C. Some 175,000 people from all walks of life, with differing ideologies and purposes, marched from the White House to the Capitol.
Now, that was a protest at the height of the Vietnam War, with a lot of the same commie groups supporting it. And it kept going.
What's your point?
Some who came to break the peace stayed on in West Potomac Park. For them, the April 24th rally was only a prelude to May Day, an opportunity to advance their own well-defined aim, to shut down the federal government. These militant and violence-prone members of the New Left decided that the style, discipline, and tactics of peaceful assembly were no longer acceptable.
Oh, no longer acceptable. They wanted it to go coast to coast, right? Those are the good old days for them. Well, we did see some of that in the summer of 2020, the summer of love after George Floyd. But today, it all seemed kind of uninspired, a rerun of a rerun. And it's funded by the same shady sources that back the group Code Pink, including a Chinese billionaire, Neville Leroy Singham.
Oh?
Now, they'll tell you there were 3,000 protests, but come on. Take a closer look. At Trump Tower, that group, that gaggle, consisted of, just a few upper middle class leftists apparently bored in their retirement. And they were so desperate for protest attendees in Chicago that the teachers union pushed to give all students the day off to participate. Remember, you got to start them early. They didn't get their wish, but CBS is still reporting that the school district there provided buses so students could attend the protests.
Did your teacher encourage you to walk out?
Yeah, most of the teachers were pretty on board with the idea. So
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because originally it was a protest for the union, so they were pretty on board with it because they are part of the teachers union at the end of the day.
The teacher said just walk out of class so you could be...
Not necessarily, but there were some teachers that were like, it's a walkout, you guys can just go protest, go.
Good for Mike Tobin.
And that's how it works.
Now, I'm sure
bro.
that student was riveted when failed Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson addressed his little apparatchiks.
Young people today.
Young people
You're
today.
Here by choice.
Yes, you are.
You are here because you are creating action that will turn into power. Do not let anyone take your power away from you. Thank you for being a part of this movement. Thank you for raising your voices.
How about try raising test scores, buddy? Only 40% of the students can read at grade level in these areas of Chicago, but
she's talking.
We already know they don't care. Not Johnson,
racist.
not Pritzker, and not the teachers' unions that bankroll the Democrat Party. Instead, their goal is clear. It's permanent power, creating a loyal majority by pushing mass amnesty for illegals, tossing out federal breadcrumbs, and whipping up false fears of racism. It's just more dead ends for people who could actually benefit from policies that deliver jobs and safer streets, otherwise known as the Trump agenda. Joining me now is Jonathan Turley, constitutional law prof and Fox News contributor. Professor, they were chanting a little bit about the court and some of these protests today and court packing.
Okay, fuck this.
I want people to understand, because I think they hear court packing. It doesn't really
want to hear from him. You don't need to hear.
All right, y'all. So it's official. It's official. We got new video from the alleged attempted White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting. The guy by the name of Cole Allen tried to get into the speech that the president was giving. Now, we already did a big breakdown of it, the day after, where we walk through all the weirdness, all the discrepancies, the way everybody reacted. and looked at it from basically every single
Everyone
angle.
was overreacting.
Well, now, this is kind of crazy because we have official HD video. This is not the AI enhanced HD video. It's actual HD video. And we have new surveillance security footage of Cole Allen sort of wandering around the hotel right before he launched the attack. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pop this up on screen and take a look at this. Here we go.
5 days old, bro.
So he's walking down the hallway here, looking at the gym. Seems like a pretty tall, skinny guy. So this is Friday night. They'll show the time here shortly, approximately 3 minutes pass. Walking down the hallway again, approximately 8:23 p.m. Here we go.
Okay. Comes back into the gym because he cased it.
Puts on a coat that he didn't have on before. All right, so now here we go.
Coat checks.
You have a whole bunch of law enforcement officials, different kinds of law enforcement officials, sort of standing around. They got the metal detector. You can see the circle in the distance. That is Cole Allen. And Cole Allen is about to walk through this door. But what happens next is kind of fascinating. Take a look. Here we go. Yeah. So he walks out.
The dog follows
Security's
him
just
in.
sort of standing around there. So
And he
boom,
runs in.
So he walks out. He's able to grab his weapon. Or I would say take his weapon out of his backpack, but if you look at the earlier videos, he doesn't have a backpack on. So it's kind of bizarre. I don't know. Did he keep it like under his coat when he put his coat on?
Yeah,
I'm not quite
probably.
sure. But he walks out past that door, grabs his weapon somehow, which I guess is sitting there. Very strange, sort of contradicts with the official story. And then, shockingly, there literally only like one of the law enforcement officials is even looking in this direction, okay? Now, there's one law enforcement official where you can see that it says police on his back. Take note, he's going to pull out his gun here, and he's going to be the one who rings off some shots. Again, contradicting the official story. And I believe he ends up hitting another law enforcement official. So the person who's standing on the bottom left of the screen here that says police on their back, he's going to take out his gun and shoot. And I believe this person standing against the wall in the back, in the middle, is going to get hit in a bulletproof vest. All right, here we go. Ready? So there he is, walking back in the door in the distance. Then he runs out with... Now, what the fuck happened there? There was a dog. Look at this. What in God's name? So now more law enforcement comes in. They got him on the ground. They somehow get his fucking shirt off.
Huh.
More law enforcement. Playback speed decreased to 35%. Here we go. Now we're going to get to see this more in slow motion. So a couple things I want you to witness. Number one, again, the police officer on the bottom left and the person standing against the wall in the middle, in the back here. The bottom left is going to shoot, and it's going to hit the one in the middle in the back. So take note of that because, again, they say, no, he's the one that shot and hit the bulletproof vest of one of the law enforcement officials. That's bullshit. This was friendly fire, and they're covering up for it. Okay? The other thing that you'll notice is, look in the back in this door that he comes out. There's a police dog looking right there right now.
I know.
And there's an officer looking through that door. And he comes running out of there in like 2 seconds. What the fuck happened here? Look at this.
He pulls the dog away.
Look at this.
He walks away with the dog.
So walks away. He's going to come flying out of that door.
And then this guy comes out.
What the fuck did that... The dog was warning the officer. The officer didn't do dick. Look at this. So now this guy's shooting. The police officer shooting. And there's a lot of officers in the background where they shot. Literally missed Cole Allen every single time from fucking point blank range. Dude was running like Usain Bolt and got right by them. That shit is crazy, bro. That shit is crazy. Now you got more Secret Service, you get police, you get all these law enforcement officials. Some of the law enforcement officials ran away. Some of the security people ran away. The ones that were leaning against the wall, I think one of them was the one that got hit,
we're out of here.
ran away. Now, by the way, let's also look at this one. No, but for real, what the fuck was this cop looking at? So this is strange. So the dog appears to alert the officer. Here, I'll play it. The dog is looking. That's where Cole Allen is, right through that door.
Come back. He pulls on
and there's
that
the
leash.
officer looking through that door.
Like, huh?
Looking through that door.
Dog
Again,
alerts
the
again.
dog's like, hey, man, over here, bro. Look, over here, bro. then walks away. Boom, that's when he comes flying out. Look at this. How the fuck is that? What the fuck, bro? Look at this. Where the red circle is. That is crazy. Look at this. The dog's like, hey, over here, through this door, there's a potential shooter. And the cop is looking.
Leash is tight.
Or Secret Service, whoever that is. And then, boom, runs out. Like, what the fuck is this? Now he's just looking confused.
Dog's like, what
the fuck?
The dog's
this
like,
is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. This is one of the craziest fucking things I've ever seen in my life.
It's useless. What's the dog
Wild,
for?
Bro. Wild. One more time. Looking, they got him,
What is the
and then boom, he runs out.
dog for?
So crazy. So look, they're
Old
lying to us
guy.
about the
Oh,
official story.
shit.
The idea that Cole got the shots off, he didn't. He didn't get the shots off. It was a friendly
Yeah,
fire
bro,
incident for
putting
sure.
together the
And I don't know
fucking,
how Cole wound up on the ground.
scanner was like, oh,
with
shit,
no shirt
Paul.
on. All of it's very, very bizarre. So look, I'll just say it. Everybody's been talking about it, but I've seen there's more people who seem to disbelieve the official story than believe the official story. And that is not something that was the case. With the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting, in the immediate aftermath, it was like 90+% of people believed, of course, that they tried to kill Trump and, it was an atrocity and yada, yada. And then over time, it came out that it's more like, online is more like 50-50, that like half the people think it was staged now, the Butler, Pennsylvania thing. But this one, like immediately it was like 60 to 70%. We're like, nope, I'm not buying it. This is bullshit. They lie about everything. They're lying about this. Here's the shit that people are saying. Let me show you this tweet. Top question so far following the White House Correspondents' Dinner alleged assassination attempt in no order of importance. Staged?
Yeah.
Why was there a post from 2023 that simply stated the shooter's first and last name? Why was the shooter's shirt off? Why did the SS look so disorganized? That's Secret Service. Why has Trump skipped every White House Correspondents' Dinner until this one? Why did the shooter mention he especially was not targeting Kash Patel? That one gets me too, bro.
Yeah, what the
That
fuck?
one gets me too. And the reason that gets me is because the
Like,
FBI
no, I'm
has
not
a
going
history
after Kash.
of basically
He's my buddy.
grooming people to do attacks and then stopping them from doing the attack right after they tell them to do the attack.
Oh,
it's how
was
they
it
got
the
like a bunch of,
FBI?
like mentally ill young Muslim teens during the war on terror. They would say,
Yeah.
FBI foils terror plot. And then you go look at the specifics and they like groomed somebody to do an attack and then stopped them from doing attack right after they said do an attack.
Yeah.
And so why would he say not Kash Patel? It seemed very, very bizarre. They continue. Why was the shooter's name searched hundreds of times in Israel a day before the incident? Why did Caroline Levitt's husband warn a Fox News reporter to be very safe prior to the shooting? Why did the shooting just happen to occur at a time that Trump's poll numbers are at the lowest of any modern president? Why did the shooter book a $3,000 a night hotel room months ago for an event that Trump never attends until he recently announced he would? Why was
Right.
Trump's deputy chief of staff climbing on a chair to start a chant of USA, USA? Why would an award-winning tutor, Caltech grad, and NASA intern try to pull off such a crude, unplanned attempt? Why did the Secret Service lower their security protocols that night? Why was Hegseth seen laughing very shortly after the shooting event? Why was VP Vance removed before the president? Why was the president allowed to stay on the scene and observe with seemingly no security protecting him? Why did right-wing social media all come out with the same ballroom talking point only minutes after the shooting? That's another one that gets me, bro. I don't
Yeah,
like
that
it was
one is
literally minutes
crazy.
after the shooting, and all of the MAGA accounts and the group chats were
Literally.
like, ballroom, 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 ballroom. Why does it appear that the same Secret Service agents that failed in Butler, Pennsylvania were on the scene at the White House Correspondents' Dinner? Why did the Secret Service agents appear to be grossly untrained, frequently mishandling their firearms? Why did the entire cabinet look downright jovial after being put through an active shooter event, not traumatized like most people would be? Why was nearly the entire cabinet, president on down, present in one location, a serious break in national security policy and procedures? Why was the post from 2023 by a NASA scientist named Henry Martinez linking him to NASA intern Cole Allen? Why did Trump lie about tripping, falling to the ground? Why did a Fox News correspondent have her phone call cut off when she revealed what Caroline Levitt's husband told her? How does a person reportedly carry multiple weapons pass or bypass initial screening at a presidential level event? Why would a planner send incriminating intent before escape or success? How did the Trump administration know the intent of the shooter just minutes
Look at
after
that.
the
He was
event?
always
Why was
upstairs.
the narrative
He was always
outpacing formal
away
ID
anyway.
confirmation?
Floor
How did the
away.
administration know it was a lone wolf situation so quickly? Why did the Washington Hilton have layered screening? Why didn't the Washington Hilton have layered screening protections? Was this a true breach or something else entirely? Why would someone with
Wasn't
no
even a
criminal record
breach.
suddenly risk being killed for such a low success probability attempt? The other thing is, in his letter that he sent to his family like 10 minutes before he attempted this, he said, like, well, something to the effect of like, oh, I'm probably in the hospital now. I probably need to be in the hospital, but much of my own doing. In other words,
Yes.
like, he sort of knew he would survive, but how did you know you would survive when you're going to try to kill the president, when everybody assumed if you try to kill the president, they would immediately kill you? Like, I don't know. That part is weird to me too. Like, and also, how are you drafting your fucking like manifesto 10 minutes before when you're like doing all the planning and last minute stuff to get it ready, and you're doing your letter at that point, laying out your motive. That also seems bizarre. Why were there reports of inconsistent or absent ID checks at the event? How did a person allegedly carrying multiple weapons penetrate what was supposed to be a layered security event close enough to engage inside the perimeter structure? Why, after Butler, Pennsylvania, were security protocols not more rigid? The questions keep mounting, and blah, 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 goes on and on. I see more people disbelieving this than believing this on social media, and that's not just liberals or leftists. There's plenty of conservative people who are now going, I don't fucking believe it. And look, all I have to say is, what does that say about this moment in U.S. history? I think what it says is, this is the reality that Trump brought us. Trump, I told you for the longest time, he's a right-wing postmodernist, so he doesn't believe in objective truth. He doesn't believe in the truth. He believes in his truth. He believes in the power of narrative and storytelling, and functionally making stuff up and running with it. So he created this sort of post-truth world, this post-empirical, factual, objective reality-based world. And so it's more like whatever we say goes. We make it up, we run with it, it is what it is. Well, through force of will and through narrative pressure, we can change the conversation. And so since he brought us that world, now that's bled out into other realms too, where, you know, the left was always associated with science and facts and reality. And now many liberals and leftists and independents and moderates, now everybody's sort of going with the, like, no, if you destroyed the factual world that we live in, well, then fuck you. We're not going to play by those rules either. So it's almost like free license to speculate more and to question more and to maybe play a little loose with the facts. It's basically like he opened this door to a post-truth world and dragged everybody else through that door into that post-truth world, where now we're all here, right? Now we're all here. And a lot of the characteristics of the right have been picked up by liberals and leftists and independents and moderates. And, you know, they got their wish. They got their wish, which is we're going to drag everybody down, and we're going to make our political environment much more crass, much more coarse, much less measured. And now here we are. But again, Trump brought us this world. And the fact that the guy told over 30,000 lies in his first term, and he can't seemingly go a day without telling at least a dozen lies, that set the stage for us to be where we are now. Because if he lies about everything else, why wouldn't he lie about something like this? Like, this is the thought process, and that's a reasonable thing to take away, is it not? That is a reasonable interpretation of the situation. He lies about everything. Why the fuck wouldn't he lie about this? Of course he would. There's nothing held sacred for this man. As Jeffrey Epstein, of all people, said, he's a man with no scruples. That's Jeffrey Epstein who said that about Trump, saying Trump is even lower than him, and he was a pedophile. So, I mean, that says a lot right there. So, new video just dropped, and yet again, it's not answering any questions. If anything, it's raising more questions. And I do think that in the long run, the perception of this incident is going to be even more so than Butler. People will say they don't buy this, that this was fake, this was staged. It was a desperate attempt to try to shore up his poll numbers at a time when the entire country has clearly turned on MAGA. Now he's trying with UFOs. And I think that's how this is going to go down in the history books.
You want to see those
whether
UFOs?
Or not they wanted to.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well.
UFOs. Oh, he has pneumonia. Rudy Giuliani has pneumonia.
Jet fuel costs have nearly doubled since the war began. The Trump administration insists the pain is temporary, but experts say it could take more than a year for gas prices to return to pre-war levels.
Prices are through the roof for gas. They are anticipated to continue to climb. You see reports of like gas tracking services and companies and apps who are like, we don't have the capacity to we just didn't design our apps to
move this fast.
Check in real time for gas increases, because it's happening multiple times a day in some places.
Holy shit.
Places like Ohio and Illinois, gas prices are just exponentially growing. Donald Trump's handling of the Iran conflict is also getting panned. Here's ABC News reporting on Trump's just absolutely dismal approval ratings.
Tonight, as the war with Iran drives gas prices to a 4-year high, new polling shows 2/3 of Americans say the country is headed in the wrong direction. President Trump's disapproval rating hitting a record 62%. And the president underwater on every issue tested. Cost of living, inflation, the war with Iran, and the economy. On the campaign trail, Trump had promised to lower the cost of living.
We're going down and getting gasoline below $2 a gallon, bring down the price of everything from electricity rates to groceries, airfares, and housing costs.
But now gas prices surging to an average of $4.43 a gallon nationwide. Americans forced to make trade-offs. 44% say they've cut back on driving. 42% say they've cut other household expenses.
I cut down on groceries a little bit because gas is just more of an expense now. I used to not think about it.
Jet fuel costs have nearly doubled since the war began. The Trump administration insists the pain is temporary.
Once the Strait opens, you'll see prices come down
Unnecessary.
But experts say it could take more than a year for gas prices to return to pre-war levels. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy pressed by her Martha Raddatz.
Energy prices have come up. You're right. And again, you have to look at the president to say, what does a leader do? What does a president do when he sees a potential nuclear Iran? He's not going to tolerate it.
But despite Trump's numbers, the poll shows that Americans do not trust Democrats much more on the issues. Of the 11 issues tested, Democrats are only trusted more on 3 issues: health care, education, and the cost of living.
Selena Wang at the White House tonight.
There's a lot to say about this. I should tell you that in terms of like just where Donald Trump's approval rating lies, in modern times, I think Harry Truman was, had probably the lowest in like the past 100 years because of the Korean War. But the George W. Bush, 75%. If I remember correctly, the lowest he got
was like
and maybe 50%? It wasn't for very long, was like 25%.
Oh, was it?
Right at the end of his term when we had the financial crisis. Right. This is after Katrina in Iraq and his attempt to privatize Social Security, 25%. And Nixon, I think, was probably also around 25% when he left.
No one's
but remember, this is like as they're exiting.
Ever.
This is not in year 2. This is probably.
This is crazy. This is year 1, bro.
Probably. This is my guess. I don't know this for sure. This is the lowest any president has been in their second year of their term, even if it was their second term.
And have you ever seen a situation?
Sorry, you were muted.
Oh, thank you. Have you? Yeah, sorry, I had a little cough. But have you ever seen a situation too where the president is also so deeply unpopular after doing the exact opposite of what he said he was going to do on the campaign trail?
I know, right?
I mean, the no new wars thing was a big part of why he kind of won by default over the Democrats.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't.
That's unprecedented too. Like he lied his way into the presidency and is going back on every campaign promise.
George Herbert Walker Bush famously got, I think, voted out because he said, "Read my lips, no new taxes against Dukakis," and then raise taxes.
Yeah.
Right.
Although, I mean, that was the ABC segment covering that. They're the communist Kimmel network as well, right? So you can't trust what they're saying. Except every poll is horrendous for him at this point. And there was an analysis by Morgan Stanley that this is the biggest decline in the dollar, 10% since January 2025 in 50 years. And the same analysis says if things continue, the dollar is going to drop another 10% by the end of the year. It's an overall just like
it's going to help
iceberg.
Our exports, actually. It will help our trade imbalance. But aside from that, it's going to be a problem. We should also say, too, like we just had a major airline collapse. Now, a lot of that is their own fault, but they were pushed over the brink because of the cost of jet fuel. Yeah. We may see multiple ones. Collapse or need a bailout because of the jet fuel situation coming out of Iran, and then we're just going to start to see a cascading bunch of stuff as a function of that. The amazing thing about that poll is the failure of the Democratic Party to be positioned to take full advantage
the full
of
downstream
this.
effect is more severe than
In
anyone
part,
realizes.
it's a function of
it's not good.
Their failure to sort of build on the good things that Joe Biden did in terms of the economy and whatnot. Like all of that message was completely muddled with the Harris campaign. It's been completely muddled really for more than a decade, really 30 or 40 years since the first Clinton presidency, where the idea of a full-throated economic populism, both as in terms of, there's been some in terms of rhetoric, to be fair, even Clinton sort of got a little bit populist in his campaigning, and that's what was effective for him. Obama did too. But they never follow through in the context of major economic transformation as they govern. And it's just hard to sell it as rhetoric if you repeatedly do not provide the goods after that rhetoric. And so now we have a situation where the Democrats cannot capitalize in the way that they should. They're certainly going to do well in the House. They may even retake the Senate. But we need historic levels of majorities for the repair that needs to be done to this country. So we have
no one wants a nuclear Israel.
And it's not just that. You can go back to his famous, for every blue collar we lose in Pittsburgh, we're going to pick up 2 in the Philly suburbs. Wow. And in the fashioning of a new electorate that was more economically neoliberal, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally. That's where we are. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that.
2.5 hours. You should check that out.
Sam Cedar, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program Liz Pancotti.
Let's go,
Managing
Liz.
Director of Policy and Advocacy at Groundwork Collaborative. Liz, welcome back to the program. The Fed, I don't know if they've if Jerome Powell has had his last sort of press conference following the Fed meeting today, but this is his last as Fed chair.
Yeah, it'll probably be his last here in about 2 hours. I guess depends on how quickly the Senate moves, but I think widely expected to be Jay's last run.
Okay, so let's just characterize his run and where we're at, and then let's talk about the anticipated new Fed chair, Kevin Warsh. Warsh.
I feel like we should really all have our Boston accents out and just say wash like that.
I mean, that's the way I do it, but I keep being corrected for that. So
Jay Powell had an interesting run. I mean, as you guys talked about extensively, he was originally a Trump pick. Biden renominated him. And I think there are two sections of his time as Fed chair that there was a bit of an inflection point at COVID. And I guess we should be thankful that there was. But he came in, he was a non-economist, a business guy, a lawyer background who got a lot of ire for that there at the beginning. In Trump's first term, he was supportive of bank deregulation that Trump pursued that rolled back a lot of the Dodd-Frank protections put into place after the Great Recession. There were certainly some kind of bank supervisory decisions he made during that first term that were pretty good, big handouts to Wall Street. He had a pretty outsized Fed balance sheet. Again, some would classify that as handouts to Wall Street. And then after the CARES Act, there at the onset of the COVID pandemic, when we also had a very different Treasury Secretary, he, from the Fed's perspective or from their tools, carried out some of the fiscal recovery. And I would say in all of that, he moved very quickly to cut rates to zero and really took the labor market risks there at the onset of the pandemic seriously. Even as stimulus flowed throughout the economy, he continued to characterize inflation as temporary. And then I would say over the past, towards the end of Biden's term, when we had made considerable progress on inflation in 2024, I think we had hoped that he might cut rates sooner, given some of the cracks we were seeing under the hood of the labor market. We were really starting to see wage growth slow down. And now, over the past year or so, as part of Trump's term, he's been quite critical of Trump's tariffs and their inflationary effect, and the rest of the kind of economic calamity that Donald Trump has made Jay Powell deal with. And over the weekend when Bob Ware died, he's a huge deadhead. It was also the same weekend that he found out on Friday night that the DOJ was investigating him, and he came out with this video where it kind of in not his normal fashion, did a direct-to-camera appeal about the criminal investigation, and ultimately, kind of turned on Trump and has stayed pretty steady-handed over the past few months in the wake of political pressures. We are obviously getting a very new Fed chair who has indicated he will stay also very steady in the wake of political pressures, but in that he will succumb to them no matter what. So a pretty big change in pace. I don't know that I would say Jay Powell did a perfect job, but I think that what we're getting with Kevin Warsh is so much worse.
Okay, we'll get to Warsh. What's that?
Maybe we should call him Kevin Worse.
Kevin Worse.
Yes, that works.
So, okay, and I should just remind people that the Fed has a dual mandate, which is to both dampen inflation and to get as close to full employment as possible. Now, when I was younger, not that much younger, full employment was supposedly 6.5%, and then suddenly we found out, actually it's close to 3.5%, and who knows, maybe it's even less than that. Do we have a sense coming out of COVID, and then I want to get to Warsh, but just coming out of COVID, do we have a sense that, because this is important too, when I look at what Warsh has written in the past about the Fed, and he sort of has danced around a little bit, as far as I can tell, that inflation was a function of too much stimulus by both on the fiscal side and perhaps on the monetary side, fiscal being what the government spends and monetary being what the policy is of the Fed in terms of essentially issuing new dollars. Was it a function of that ultimately, or was it that we had such a massive disruption in our economic activity that it inhibited, in certain instances, supply, and couldn't get ramped back up in time when demand came as we left, sort of like the COVID lockdowns? Because compared to Europe, whatnot, and the rest of the world, we did pretty well in terms of inflation.
Yeah. I think it's an all of the above answer, which is maybe a cop-out, but I am quite intrigued by there've been a couple of papers that looked at what if interest rates weren't held at zero for as long as they were in the wake of the COVID pandemic? What if they had hiked them back up to 1 or 2% sooner in the wake of all the fiscal stimulus? So as it happened, the Fed moved very quickly to cut to zero. We got the CARES Act stimulus, and then rates stayed at zero for a pretty long time as we continue to get additional stimulus packages, which we've talked about here on the show before, and they were obviously very needed. I mean, we had people who were going to get kicked off on unemployment insurance before vaccines were available. So the fiscal response was, I think, extremely necessary and at the scale that it should have been. And it is also true that it could have been moderately inflationary. But in light of additional fiscal response, I think it is fair to ask, should the Fed have adjusted sooner, right? It's a ebb and flow. You have to kind of balance fiscal and monetary policy. And I think you could argue that maybe the Fed should have increased a little sooner and then gotten the balance right as it dealt with the labor market effects. The issue, I think, as you hit on in your third kind of scenario or explanation, is that we had no idea that Putin was going to invade Ukraine, that Chinese factories were going to stay closed as long as they did, that global supply chains would stay disrupted for as long as they did and be disrupted on multiple fronts. I mean, there was a baby formula shortage, there was a chip shortage, there was a fertilizer and grain shortage. There was a shortage of just about everything.
Shipping containers are in places they had never, ever been before.
I mean,
they couldn't get it back.
was like a hibernating bear that woke up and like didn't have the storage of food it needed throughout that hibernation. And so things just kind of got messed up. And then you had fiscal and monetary pressures that weren't exactly calibrated. But I think like where we chose, where Jay Powell, where the Fed, where Biden and Democrats chose to put their eggs in the basket of going a little too far just in case, which I think was a stark difference from how we responded to the Great Recession, where for really 8 years, I mean, you didn't have unemployment bounce back. You had people still in like the depths of the Great Recession for 2 to 3 years after the kind of end of the recession officially. And as you noted, as you and Emma were like in the beginning of your career or kind of getting those first couple jobs out of college, maybe for Emma.
It was a little bit after that for me. But
I graduated in 2016, but that's all right. Yeah.
But it was a tough. But 2016 was like not that easy to.
No, it wasn't great either. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think as you noted, what is full employment? We had like an okay labor market by 2019, but it took that long to get there. And then immediately almost you had the COVID shock. And then we told everybody that they should stay home because there was a global health emergency. And I think the difference I would point to with respect to Europe is that yes, there are some European countries that face much higher inflation than the US and different labor market outcomes, certainly. One, they had different tools at their disposal and they were much more exposed to the Ukraine crisis. So that those moved in different directions, right? Some countries were able to use price controls to kind of mitigate some of those effects. We saw Mexico do that. We saw Spain do that effectively. But I think the real thing is that the U.S. had certain tools that were available to it in the fiscal and monetary space that, of course, did not include price controls. And maybe that would have changed the inflationary scenario. But the big difference to me in looking retrospectively at all of that is we learned from the mistakes of the Great.
Chris Smalls has been detained outside the Met Gala.
Recession. And the thing that worries me the most about Kevin Warsh is that in 2010, 2011, when unemployment was still 10%, Kevin Warsh was pushing for higher interest rates, completely ignoring the other side of, really ignoring both sides of the Fed mandate, given that we had very low inflation and we had high unemployment. And he said, neither of those really matter to me. I think we should hike.
I'm looking at a Wall Street Journal compilation of some of his best, his greatest hits in terms of like some of these op-eds. And he's all over the place, it seems to me. And it's almost like a reverse weather vane, I guess, depending on who is in office. And I'm looking at like his most recent, I guess, was in November of 2025, or at the very least, I should say, this is him applying for a job. And he says there are 4 things that need to be done. One is the Fed should really not worry about stagflation, which of course is anemic growth and rising inflation, which coincidentally is sort of what we have now. And then he says, second, inflation is a choice, and the Fed's track record under Jerome Powell is one of unwise choices. That also seems to be, like, you've just given us a breakdown. Like you say, maybe the Fed could have risen rates a little bit quicker, but there was a lot of logistical issues that were driving inflation. Third, the Fed should take responsibility for its regulatory failures. I mean, I have no problem with that. I feel like there's a lot of people who should take responsibility for their failures and never do. And then he's complaining that Yellen and Powell spent more than a decade negotiating bank regulatory standards with Swiss banks.
And I also read that he was a critic of quantitative easing in the past, which is a little bit surprising. But if it's kind of what Sam's saying, it's about the audience, and he's kind of going where he can to get into power, that would make sense too.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's going to be easing once he gets into office.
Yeah.
And just, I want to let you go with this and tell us more. I just want to remind people that we played a clip the other day of Kevin Warsh being asked,
not once or twice, but 3 attempts now on President Trump's life. This time by a radicalized teacher, of all people, a person responsible for educating your children. We wonder how we got here. But what do we expect when this is who is influencing the next generation? We send our kids off to school where they're taught by would-be assassins. When they come home and turn on the TV or scroll online to talking heads joking about the First Lady becoming a widow, it's sick and it perpetuates violence.
Yeah, sure.
But make no mistake, these are not just attacks on the President of the United States. These are attacks on the nearly 80 million people who voted for him. If something's not done soon, someone will get hurt. That's why the Justice Department intends to prosecute the suspect to the fullest extent of the law. I sat down with U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, to discuss the administration's pursuit for both justice and peace.
The fuck is this shit?
So, Jeanine, welcome back. Loved having you on the show. Thank you so much. Listen, it's so shocking, I think, but here we are again. It feels like Groundhog's Day. We have another attempt on the president's life. I know you were there on Saturday night. You've since announced that federal charges against Cole Allen will go forward. And as we get more information on this guy, who he was, and all that took place, what is your office focused on right now?
Well, you know, Laura, as I indicated at the time of the presentment, there are presently 3 charges, some of the most serious charges in the federal code, and they are the attempted assassination of a president of the United States, you know, carrying a firearm in interstate commerce with the intent to commit a felony and discharge of a firearm, which has a mandatory minimum of 10 years consecutive to whatever he gets, and of course, attempted assassination of the president is life in prison. But there will be many more charges added to this case, and that's what we're working on right now to answer your question directly. We're trying to get a real digital footprint of this individual, and what we have learned so far is that everything that we have garnered up to this point is that he was calculating, he was determined, he was premeditated in his intent to commit violence. He did everything necessary in his mind to kill the president of the United States. And make no mistake, in spite of his, you know, manifesto, and in spite of the fact that he exempted this agency, the Secret Service and Capitol Police and Kash Patel and a few other people, he said, I will still do what I have to get to the president and the high-ranking officials. So we now are collecting things like, you know, everything from his electronic devices. The FBI was incredible. They immediately went out, and I was at the command center for hours and hours over the weekend, you know, trying to make sure that we connected with his family members, with his sister, his brother, with people that knew him, with students who went to school with him, and to try to get a real picture as to what his intent was. And I think that this is an extremely strong case based upon what he did. That man had every intention of killing whomever was necessary in order to kill the president of the United States and the cabinet. So we are very confident, as was shown at the detention hearing on Thursday, that he will be held and detained until we get to the point of a trial. But we are very confident in our evidence. But having said all of that, Laura, I think that the important thing to note here is that there are people in this country who are applauding this individual. And that is a really very disturbing element to all of this, because he went in there like Rambo. He had a 12-gauge pump-action Mossberg shotgun. He still had the cartridge in the chamber. He had a Velcro-attached ammunition carrier to carry more cartridges. He had a .38 with a couple of magazines that was fully loaded. He had daggers and knives and pliers and wire cutters. He came in there like a bat out of hell in order to get in there to get to the president of the United States. And our concern, of course, is that this...
Yeah, and your concern is that you actually have to come on TV to convince us. That's my concern.
This is, you know, we live in a society that's a free society, and these individuals are determined to kill your father-in-law and our president of the United States.
It is something that we think about in our family all the time. I think, unfortunately, a lot of Americans have had to think about this now, because this is the 3rd attempt in 2 years on this president's life. And you just pointed out that we have ended up here as a country because tensions are heightened because the rhetoric has gotten out of control. The president himself, Judge, actually said we need to come up with more peaceful ways to disagree. Listen to what he had to say this week.
I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. Everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people, and there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that.
What do we do to ensure we don't end up back here? Because as far as I'm concerned, I don't know how many close calls one person gets.
I know, it's very frightening. And what we've got is the president who's calling for peace and calling for unification.
Right.
And you know what? We almost had it in that room. And the president mentioned that and referenced that. I mean, here we were with, all of the journalists, all the correspondents, and, CNN and everyone, all of the networks. We were all there in a jovial, fun evening. And I think, Laura, that this is going to cause a lot of people on the left, at least the journalists and the correspondents, to say, hey, I was in the line of fire here. I could have been killed. Right. So it's not just.
Yeah. See, she's running the narrative because that's what they want. They wanted to show that to get the reporters to be scared.
The president anymore, where it's kind of a distance. It's kind of what people say to protect themselves from being and feeling vulnerable. They say, well, it happened to someone else. No, it almost happened to you. And this guy has made clear, even though he calls himself a friendly federal assassin, he's willing to kill you to get to him.
Is he?
And the sooner Americans realize that, the sooner people in the media realize it, the sooner the people on the left who have called the president every name in the book,
100%,
from Hitler to a Nazi to a traitor.
Yes, 100%. They're fomenting this. This is classic propaganda right here, guys.
What do you expect people to react? How do you expect them to react? When I was a kid, all right, and it was a long time ago, it was like Russia was the enemy. We had to run under our desk in case Russia came, right? And everybody hated Russia. Well, the young people today are being told the president is the enemy. He's this. He's he was during the Russian hoax. He's this and that. And they just grow up with that. And it should be no surprise that there are so many young people who think that political violence is the way to resolve conflict or the way to social change. And there is no respect for law and order anymore. People have just said, this is what I want. He's the enemy. He needs to be dead. And that's why law and order is so important. That's why I gave up the job, that people have at Fox right now, because it's time for us to pull back that veil of this hysteria and this leftist, communist, socialist nonsense and say, this is America. You follow the law and there will be consequences.
Well, I think that at the end of the day, my hope is that your words translate into reality. People start to realize this didn't happen to other people. It could happen to any of us.
Sure, it's kind of
have
cute,
to bring the temperature down. Just to change gears very quickly, I want to talk about the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell. Last week, you announced that your office would be closing the investigation into the multi-billion-dollar building renovation, and that the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, would be taking over this case. So what happens now? What led to that decision, first of all, and
what is
what
wrong
happens
with
now
her
with this
eyes?
case?
Well, we had been in touch with the Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General at the Federal Reserve, and I spoke with him, and I indicated that what I wanted was for him to do his investigation, to complete it in short order, and get his conclusion to me. Because we have a federal judge by the name of Boasberg, you may have heard that name before, who has made a decision that I, as the United States Attorney, as a prosecutor in this district, cannot go into my own grand jury and present evidence or subpoenas to get the information that I need to find out, is there corruption at the bottom of billions of dollars of a cost overrun? Or is there incompetence? What is it? And a federal judge has foreclosed me from doing that. So I am appealing that decision. And in the interim, Horowitz is the man who can get the information. And I've indicated to him, we're waiting for your conclusion. And depending upon what you find out, I may or may not continue.
Well, I think that we'll be hopeful. We'll be watching. We want to get to the bottom of it.
Please
we don't like fraud. We don't like abuse. We don't like waste, for sure.
What is wrong with her eyes?
As with everything with this administration, as you know, Judge, there are always critics. There are always people who have things to say about it all. A lot of people will say that maybe your decision here was motivated in some way to assist the president in getting his choice for the Federal Reserve chair in that spot. What is your response to that?
What I've always said is I'm in the legal lane. I don't care about the political lane. They don't even intersect as far as I'm concerned. But if I am prevented by a federal judge from getting evidence and information, then the only option I have is to go to the man who can get that information. And depending upon what he finds, I'll make a decision as to what I'm going to do.
All right. Well, we appreciate you so much,
It's
Judge
good to
Janine
see
Pirro.
you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody on Saturday night.
I know.
I miss you.
They're used to seeing you. They got me now.
They're used to you and they love you.
Well, you are the best. Thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.
It's kind of morphed into more like they have a biblical right to your support. And if you define it that way, which I think Tucker does, more and more people are like, well, I'm out. Beirut is starting to look like Gaza, and you're unapologetic about it. And now I'm sick of it, and I don't care. And I think Tucker doesn't care, and I think you don't care, and sane people don't care. Call me whatever the hell you want, I don't care.
Name one political concession. Name one political concession.
I have sat on panel after panel after panel with Scott Jennings as he lies about this war. I'm not playing the games where I have to be nice.
Don't be a wise ass, okay? Stick to the substance.
Mockler, you have no reason to apologize. The reason why they're attacking your tone is because they can't attack your substance.
Let me get the small violin out. I had stage 4 prostate cancer. I was shot 5 times with hollow point bullets on the orders of the Gaudis to the Gambinos. You keep the king and the queen there. We'll keep Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse here because that's your Disney World.
Last week, 2 Jewish men were stabbed in a primarily Jewish London neighbourhood. The Somali-born suspect was heroically detained by police, and thankfully, this time, both men survived. But attacks like this keep happening with disturbing frequency all over Europe and in the United States too. The only correct response is for everybody to emphatically reject anti-Semitism wherever they see it, just as the correct response to an attempt on the president's life is to reject all forms of political violence. It's not a correct response to censor liberal opinions or liberal people on the basis that the attempted assassin had left-wing positions. And the exact same thing can be said of criticising Israel. In fact, conflating Israel and Judaism is part of the problem. And it's the people who claim to be most concerned about anti-Semitism who keep doing it. Last week, Mark Levin called for so-called Nazis, including Dave Smith and Tucker Carlson, to be deplatformed using the exact same language that was once deployed against conservatives like him. Listen carefully to his words here.
The hate crimes against Jews in Europe are through the roof. Against Jews in the United States are through the roof.
Sure, dude.
Does anybody care about World War II and the Holocaust anymore?
What does that have to do with
to hate
fucking
Israel.
Gazans, you dumb
Hate
piece of shit?
Netanyahu. The Jews got us in this war with Iran. The president has said over and over again, BS. I make the decisions as president of the United States.
The Jews got us into the war with Iran, he says, drawing a straight line between a legitimate opinion and anti-Semitic violence. But nobody says that. Many people blame Israel for involving the US in the war in Iran, mostly because of the overwhelming on-the-record evidence and reporting which substantiates that view. That's very different to blaming the religion and its followers. Mark Levin and others who share his views do this repeatedly, and it's dangerous. Violent attacks against Jewish people have been rising all over the world ever since the Israeli war on Hamas. Many people are rightly furious about the civilian death toll in Gaza. Some people are dangerous and insane. All the more reason to make crystal clear that Netanyahu is no more a spokesman for global Judaism than Cole Thomas Allen is a spokesman for the Democrats. A similar debate about the importance of words formed part of Tucker Carlson's much-discussed interview with the New York Times.
From my understanding of my own, I was just in Germany recently, and, it was such a good reminder that the Holocaust didn't start with the gassing of Jews. It started with the dehumanization of Jews. It was language that was used. And again, that is what
I couldn't agree more. And that's why when you have a U.S. senator, a member of Congress, a U.S. ambassador waving away civilian deaths as if they don't matter, that's the language of genocide, which results, and this is the lesson of the Holocaust, in genocide itself.
Well, right on cue, yesterday's Israel National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir posed with his birthday cake, decorated with a golden noose and the words, "Sometimes dreams come true," a grotesque celebration of his new two-tier death penalty law, which will target only Palestinians. Anybody misusing anti-Semitism to deflect criticism of Israel is leaving Jewish people everywhere to shoulder the blame for the behaviour of people like Ben-Gvir. I can't think of anything more likely to put them in harm's way than that. Well, my all-star panel is standing by, but we'll begin today's show with Megyn Kelly, host of The Megyn Kelly Show. Megyn, welcome back to Uncensored.
Great to be here, Piers.
Mark Levine has posted on X, folks, Carlson, Tucker, is in my opinion mentally ill. That is the explanation. It's not complicated. What he says, incessant lying and conspiracies, obsessive hatred of Israel and Jews, his speech pattern and odd rambling, strange cackling, wild mood swings and all the rest. That's his latest diatribe about Tucker. He's done similar to you as well and others. What do you make of that?
Frankly, I can't believe that Fox News allows him to continue going on the air, given what he's saying about mainstream conservative figures. It's really dangerous. And I think if Mark Levin and others want to figure out why there's so much negative feeling happening about Israel right now, they should start by looking at Israel instead of the people who are offering the criticism. You know, it's not dissimilar entirely from the whole thing with Ben Shapiro going after you, going after me, deciding on his own who can and cannot be within the conservative movement. And then when some of us said, who died and made you king of conservatives? Who gets to decide who's in and out? They said, you're an anti-Semite. Wait, no. What you're saying is creating anti-Semites. No. What he is saying is creating anti-Semites. Anybody who purports to say, I will decide who can speak and who cannot, and how they need to speak and how they can't, automatically engenders a sort of revulsion by the thinking West, because we have freedom in our blood and we don't work that way generally. That tends to be a very far left thing, the policing of the language. And there have been people who are very pro-Israel, like Levin, like the folks over at Commentary Magazine, who for a very long time now have been trying to conflate anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And then a debate unfolded about what is anti-Zionism? Because many of us thought it was, do you believe that Israel, is a country, like they deserve to have a place to live? It's kind of morphed into more like they have a biblical right to your support for whatever portion of the Middle East they want to occupy. And if you define it that way, which I think Tucker does, more and more people are like, well, I'm out. I'm not saying that. They don't have a right to dominate the Middle East, and they don't have a right to be in those particular borders any more than the United States has a right to be in its particular borders. Over the course of hundreds of years, these things change. There's not a biblical right that I need to support as a Christian. But it has been the most ardently pro-Israel people, like the Commentary Magazine people, like Mark Levin, who have been trying to intentionally make that conflation. And it's just not true. You go on your show regularly and criticize your government and the United States. I do the same. I mean, if you counted up all the criticisms I've had of obviously the Joe Biden administration, the Obama administration, but also the Trump administrations, we'd be here for months. But I can't do the same against Bibi Netanyahu. I can't do the same against Israel because I'm a Christian or because it makes me an anti-Semite. Thinking people know that's a lie and it makes them recoil.
Yeah, and I think the people like Mark Levin, who, starting that clip that I show with, people are trying to blame the Jews. They're not. I mean, look, there are some people out there who are genuinely anti-Semitic who will definitely blame the Jews for everything and hate Jewish people. Of course they are. They're genuine anti-Semites.
Or Carlson.
But the people he's alluding to in that rant of his are actually people who've criticised the Israeli government, and people like Ben-Gvir, whose wife gives him a birthday cake for his 50th birthday only 2 days ago, which has a golden noose on it. And they celebrate this. This is psychopathic behaviour. And I've been pointing this out about Smodrich and Ben-Gvir for a while. For those who are not as up to speed with the history of what happened here. Netanyahu only got back into power by getting into bed with some extremely dark individuals like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, whose game plan really is to get all the Palestinians out of the West Bank, out of Gaza, and take it all over themselves. They are supremacists in that sense. And the idea that somehow you conflate criticism of those people working in a very, very hardline Israeli government, doing some stuff which most people, most decent-minded people, find increasingly unacceptable, that you suddenly twist that into, well, it's blaming the Jews. This is an anti-Jewish thing, as if somehow it's about the religion of anybody. It's completely shameful and outrageous.
No, they're using it as an obvious tactic to stop us from leveling those criticisms. And I will tell you, as somebody who's been defensive largely of Israel over the past few years in its retaliatory campaign against Hamas, I'm disgusted by this because this guy puts the truth to what I had previously believed was a lie about Israel. You know, I didn't get into the day today that much on what was happening in Gaza, but I generally felt like, you know what, they attacked Israel. It was absolutely brutal. It was a terrorist attack. And you and I had a discussion about, do they really need a proportionate response, Israel? We wouldn't have done that as the United States. I meant that at the time. I looked at Israel and perceived its behavior in good faith. Like this is a people that was attacked like we were attacked on 9/11, and they have every right to go and, you know, harshly defend themselves against the group of people that did it. No, it's so far beyond that. They genuinely don't seem to care about the tens of thousands of civilians, including children, including members of the press, including people who are obviously innocent. And enough time goes by, Piers, and even people like me who were previously pro-Israel see, wait a minute, they're lying. They're using that, the horror of 10/7, to justify their own terrible behavior every day thereafter. And you see this on camera. You can't avoid it. The other piece of the card is what's happening now in Iran, where President Trump, I think having realized this was a massive mistake, is trying repeatedly to get us out of it, the United States. And why can't we? Because our truly close personal ally, Israel, won't let us. Every time he tries to declare a peace, they start bombing Lebanon again. And Iran says, you know what? There's no peace deal. This was part of it. We know it was part of it because the Pakistani prime minister tweeted that out the night of the ceasefire, saying Lebanon is part of it. And only once Israel called Trump, Netanyahu, saying, hey, we really want to keep bombing Lebanon and we're not going to agree not to, did it suddenly get otherized. And that's been one of the main sticking points in actually having a ceasefire ever since. Israel at every turn turns to warlike behavior, more deaths of civilians. Look at the journalists who are being killed in Lebanon, not to mention the children who are getting bombed. Some of it is on camera. And every time just says, oh, well, we tried not to. Well, I listened to that. I listened to that for a good year, 2 years. And now I see you doing it in location after location. And Lebanon and Beirut is starting to look like Gaza. And you're unapologetic about it. And you won't work with us. And you definitely goaded our president into this, though he has agency and is equally to blame. And now I'm sick of it. And I don't care. And I think Tucker doesn't care. And I think you don't care. And sane people don't care. Call me whatever the hell you want. I don't care. I've been called a bigot by the trans people. I've been called a racist by the BLMers. I've been called now an anti-Semite by you folks.
Yeah, it's the same tactic, isn't it?
I'm a truly disgusting person, or I just have political takes based on reality that are mainstream now.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the same tactic each time. It's actually a tactic of enforcing censorship. What they're trying to do is bully people like me and you into not being critical of things like Israel's policy in Lebanon or Gaza, or, as you say, criticism of the transgender arguments, particularly surrounding women's sport, which was, to me, history will look back and go, who on earth ever defended that nonsense? You know, to other issues involving the BLM riots, for example, when they happened. You could have a perfectly legitimate position being outraged about what happened to George Floyd, and also think the rioting that followed was outrageous, and there was a double standard about the way those rioters got treated compared to, say, the January 6th rioters. All these things, if you're intellectually honest, you can be honest about all of these things separately. And what happens is, as you said, you get called anti-Semitic, transphobic, racist, and it's a deliberate tactic to silence us. And it's a really insidious one.
The anti-Semitic charge is a little different from the other charges in the following way, in my experience, because I'm new to this. I've been very pro-Israel, and I'm in no way an anti-Semite. Absolutely not. And there actually is zero evidence to the contrary, other than I continue to be friends with Tucker Carlson. Okay, great. But it's different from the others because on the right, I think most people dismiss, okay, racism. We're used to them saying that whenever we get critical of like these affirmative action programs or whatever. The trans thing, yes, they say transphobe, bigot, whatever. None of us take that seriously. But being called an anti-Semite on the right has actually caused many of us pause because the right has been very associated with being pro-Israel since as long as I was at Fox, which started in 2004. Like you were kind of expected to be pro-Israel, certainly as a Fox News anchor, but just as a conservative in America from that point forward. And so it's a little bizarre to hear your own side use those terms against you. But what I've realized now is that it's because Israel, through its emissaries like AIPAC, has put dollars into the pockets of virtually all of our politicians, left and right here in America. And they will not go down without a fight. They have such a large presence here in the United States, which is totally antithetical to the way that our founding fathers envisioned our role in the world. They did not want foreign influence here in the United States of America. They knew you couldn't serve two masters at once. They understood that it would create this sort of resentment for the one. And it's so ubiquitous now that they actually do have a lot of purchase. There's a guy named Brad Parscale who's registered as a foreign agent for Israel who's helping run Salem Media, which hosts several of our large podcasts now. And he is 100%, I believe, behind a lot of the online targeting that people like me and Tucker and probably you, Piers, are getting right now. So what happens with the Israel crowd is that they have better funding and they're much more organized than the BLMers or the trans lobby. So I don't know what your social media is like, but I have gotten completely deluged with bots and, oh, Ben Shapiro was right. And you know they're bots. They all said the same tweet. It happened to Candace Owens. And so you feel it more, and it's fine. I've been targeted by many people. They will never shut me up or change my POV. But there are people who have smaller platforms who are just starting to ascend in this space, or just civilians who have opinions like ours, who also get pummeled and see us being made examples of. And so it's really deeply pernicious and dangerous. And not everybody's like you or Tucker or me, who our response to that is a massive middle finger to these people. I'd rather lose every single audience member than bend the knee to them, which isn't going to happen. But they're trying to make examples of us to threaten and scare.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, you know, you and Tucker are very proudly and firmly conservative right figures in America, and two of the most prominent in the country. I've never been that or positioned myself in that way. I consider myself to be a centrist, really. You know, I used to run a reasonably left-wing newspaper in the UK, the Daily Mirror. I'm certainly not conservative right by any normal metric. There have been a lot of crossover points, I think. The woke explosion, for example, brought a lot of us together on all that stuff. So lots of things that I find myself agreeing with you about, and there are some things you and I wouldn't agree about. But what this leads me just into the other point I was going to make, which is the incendiary nature of political rhetoric now. I just sense is getting completely out of hand and is driven by an inherent intellectual dishonesty, that people are just getting more and more venomous in their rhetoric. And I don't exclude the president from this, right? You know, I've known him a long time. I consider him a friend. I was texting with him last week about the Royals, in which he showed the very best of President Trump. He was very, you know, warm and friendly and cracking jokes and very charming. And then, you know, other times in the last few weeks, he's gone, you know, pretty berserk on social media and talked about annihilating 90 million people and so on in Iran. What do you feel about this general debate about rhetoric, political rhetoric, particularly from those political leaders?
Well, I mean, I reject the leftist accusation that, you know, having controversial opinions is causing mass shootings and so on and so forth. You know, I just don't generally think. I think there are crazies out there who do what they're going to do, and it's unfortunate. And even if like some angry rhetoric was somehow incentivizing some bad behavior, this is America. You can say what you want to say. You know, it's like very hard to police that. However, I do think the language and behavior that like truly dehumanizes people, and I'll just give you the latest example. And by that, I don't mean, you know, like I reject BLM or, you know, Trump is terrible. It's the stuff like those young high school girls on these now viral videos who are playing the audio of Charlie Kirk's assassination. His last few words, and then the sound of the bullets ringing out as the changeover music from their before pictures getting ready for the prom to the after with their prom gowns on and their makeup and hair done. That is dehumanizing.
Yeah, okay.
That stuff is genuinely dangerous. The celebrations of Luigi Mangione, the hundreds of TikTok videos of people saying, like the shooter at the Trump assassination attempt, most recent, needed to get a better plan and better aim. How sad people were that he didn't get murdered. You know, like that's effing crazy, Piers. And that stuff truly, I think, is leading us down a really dangerous path because we've always had psychos. But the open celebration of the attempted assassinations is only going to lead to more of them. And we're now at a place where you've got some 20% of young liberals thinking political violence is okay. They see it. I think it's 6% of conservatives. So there is an imbalance there, though it's not entirely one-sided. And as somebody who, yes, I am more right-leaning for sure in my ideology, but I'm a registered independent, so I'm not a Republican. I would vote for both sides, and I have voted for both sides, but I see that it is the right that is mostly dying as a result of this. It has to stop. Like, it really has to stop. I think people are getting scared right out of the political arena.
Just finally, Megan, we're going to wrap up, but Donald Trump and Iran, it looks to me like he is desperate to get out of this with any kind of victory that he can. But at the moment, Iran is just not playing ball and has managed to work out that the control of the Strait of Hormuz is all they really need to do to string this out as long as they like and cause enormous damage. What should Trump be doing, do you think? I mean, if I was advising him, I'd be like, you know something, if this goes on for another few months, you can kiss goodbye to the House and the Senate in November. This is going to be enormously politically damaging for you, for the Republicans, for everything. And there's no easy way to sort this. You should just claim victory and get out. Say we've smashed up their military, we've put back their nuclear aspirations, you know, however long you want to put a number on it, just get out of here. I don't see any upside in this being strung out through the summer, do you?
No, this has been a disaster for the Trump administration and for our country and for the world. I mean, the global fuel supply, just take a look at the numbers. You've got American, European airlines, Middle East airlines now completely revamping their forecast for this year. We reported this morning that American Airlines had projected a $4 billion profit expected this year. It's all been wiped out. They said the entire thing has been wiped out by...
What? Islam is cancer? Dang.
The rising price of jet fuel. Spirit Airlines just went over here in America. They were already struggling for years, but this didn't help. And all of that's going to eventually get passed on to the consumer. So, and that's just...
Okay. Who cares? What's your point? You haven't studied up enough on Christian, reactionary Christian groups and what? I would even argue that the reason America is so war hungry is because of Christians. What do you mean? Even if you were to take all the Islam nations together, they never would equal the strength of America. Even your argument on the face is not true. You have no proof of that. There's no proof. Because a religion believes in something you don't believe in?
one example. That's airline fuel. I mean, forget prices at the actual gas pump. And
that's your first
the
chat?
cost of oil in general, which tends to skyrocket energy and other prices. All of that's coming, even if we end the war today.
Much?
So my best advice to the president would be, give the Iranians the deal they want.
Yeah, you treat women badly too. Misogynists treat women badly. Christians are resistant to fucking scientific research. The president of the United States doesn't believe in science. He hired the goddamn RFK to... That motherfucker? Oh, you're an atheist. Then you know what I'm fucking talking about. Even it...
They seem to be willing to deal on the Strait of Hormuz, which of course is an absurd place to be. It was open before this war. If we had just left them alone, we would never have this problem. But give them a deal to get that thing back open, because it does need to open back up. And let them give you a fig leaf.
Well, we can certainly have conversations about how I feel about how Christianity and any religion in general, but especially Christianity, has been cause for most wars. And at no point in recent history would I say that Islam has leading that war. It's been the Christians. I'm sorry.
On nuclear ambitions. Because look, we already...
Defending Islam. Left-wing people, we defend Islam because we like people. We allow people to be themselves. We don't judge a person based upon a sect of their religion or a sect of their political belief, for example. So you're already saying you're a white-wing person. The point is
their ability
if
to
you're
develop a
right-wing
nuclear weapon
or you're
back.
right-leaning or you're centrist, you're leaning more towards I don't give a fuck about people. That's just the truth.
Back in June with the strike on the plants. We know that. We know they were nowhere near getting a nuclear bomb from our own intelligence
To
community.
each his own, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, etc. You know, the old adage, the old Reagan neoliberal bullshit that we've been chewing on and eating, and it hasn't worked.
Told that to President Trump just before we unleashed this war on them. So we don't...
I definitely agree that religion should be even more separated from government than it already is. But I don't agree with banning him. Then we will have chaos. You understand that the certain people are just dumb, okay? I'm sorry. They just have I'm not talking about IQ. I'm just saying they just want to wake up. They want to go to work. They want their religion, and they want to fucking be like a cog in the machine. They're NPCs.
Back up.
They're fine. They stand around and talk about how politics doesn't affect their life, and they have no idea what politics is, and they wonder why the gas is so expensive. Fine. Be an NPC. You're left-wing and Islamophobic. You're actually admitting you're Islamophobic. Well, those are not compatible. I'm sorry. They just aren't. Some of the best fucking leftists are from, are Arabic or Islamic. Are you kidding me, dude? The fuck?
Need much from the Iranians on that front. They haven't gotten better able to produce a new...
by America's fascination with Christian neo-Nazis. And,
as a result of this war. Just get out. Let them give us some stupid fig leaf that we can declare as somehow a victory. Oh, it's better than Obama's joint, agreement. And reopen the strait, which is the number one thing. You did decimate pieces of their military. Great. Call it. This is a nightmare. We don't have to get into the specifics. But get out. Just get out. And what you can see, Piers, is he knows that. He knows that. But the Iranian...
You're talking about a certain type of Muslim. You are correct. Just like you could be having a conversation about a certain type of Christian. There's plenty of Christians that are just Christian, pray to God every day, and that's all they do. They don't go to church. That's just a thing. Then there's Christians that we all know what they're like.
Iranians know it too, and they won't just bend the knee. And Trump is not used to being in this position. He's used to bullying his way out of everything. And these guys cannot be bullied. And he doesn't know what to do. He's great at shit talking.
I agree.
And he's really not great at winding up
Most
wars
Christians
that he starts by choice. That's what we're learning.
Fascists are usually going to be some kind of right-wing Christian group, which usually is very, very, very conservative, i.e. fascist. So,
yeah, it's hard to
kind of go hand in
Megyn
hand.
Kelly, always
You know what I
brilliant
mean?
to have you on Uncensored. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Like, I kind of call this a Christo-fascist government. Not going to lie. I've done it many times on my channel.
Well, listening patiently and ready to...
I have been harping about Christo-fascism. Now, you know, to my larger point, no way is Islam any kind of threat to the Christo-fascist movement. Like,
to debate, I'm joined by my panel, Curtis Sliwa, he's the Guardian Angels founder and former Republican candidate for mayor of New York, Geraldo Rivera, the correspondent at large.
I don't know why you're saying the left in general, but like you would hear me criticizing any person, irregardless of their fucking religion, acting out of sorts. You know what I mean? To put it broadly. The main reason you will hear leftists, and this goes to my point as well, criticizing Christianity, because that's exactly what we can deal with. We can deal with that, right? Especially American leftists. Our immediate enemy is the Christo-fascist, not the Islamist, okay? You know what I'm saying?
Of News Nation, Adam Mockler.
Like, we don't have time to attack Islam. We only have time to accept them into our fold and have them help us make America right, in my opinion. A bigger fucking enemy is fucking Christo-fascists taking over the country like they are. J.D. Vance, for example, being the president.
Commentator and Midas Touch contributor, and Anna Kasparian,
I've been told I'm very
producer of The Young Turks. Geraldo, let me start with you.
I have my limits.
You've always struck me as a reasonable voice.
Believe me.
Voice in America, in a.
My channel is for learning.
A cacophony of mayhem.
You came in with a question.
This war in Iran.
If you leave with 5 more questions instead of that guy was a dumbass, rather than alternative.
From where I'm looking, and I raised these concerns after day one, and nothing has shaken my...
Well, as an atheist living in Spain and being Catholic, being a Catholic thing, like a theocracy, what is it, a theocracy? Like a theocracy, right? I mean, Spain's never had really good government, right? Not since like the 70s. I don't really know that much about it.
Got into something.
Welcome.
Which has turned out to be a lot more difficult than he thought it would be, perhaps because the Israelis had assured him it would be easier than this, and that now he's in a position where if he...
Well, now I understand why you said you're Islamophobic. I wouldn't admit that. But, and leftist, because if you're from Spain, that kind of would make sense. The amount of vitriol that is going towards Islam and immigrants in the UK area, in Spain, and over that area, like, that's insane.
He carries on, it's politically disastrous, economically disastrous, and if he gets out, he'll have the accusation that it's all...
And I'll bet you the Catholics are behind it. Like, are they tolerant in Spain, the Catholics? Or are they like religious Catholics that are like rightist?
Been a waste of time and a failure. You know Trump extremely well. You've done him longer than I have. What would you be advising him right now?
I think, Pierre, it's nice to see you. I think that, first of all, now that there are dueling blockades, now that we are blockading Iran and their commerce, and they are, of course, blockading
One of the dumbest people to exist. This guy has had a career being dumb. Brilliantly dumb is what I call this guy. I don't know how he survived this long on TV. I really don't. That's what I mean. That's my understanding of Spanish Catholics. Right, so they're definitely going to be anti-immigrant, i.e. anti-Islam, because every immigrant is a child rapist, murderer, is rape gangs, blah, 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 etc., blah, 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 blah. That's all you hear all fucking day on TV, on the radio, from your friends. Not going to lie, that's probably true.
The world.
At the pub, if you go, do they call it a pub in Spain? I don't know what they call it. No, but I'm saying there's probably a lot of that sentiment in your country, right? Am I wrong? Or are you guys really pro? That's weird if your government's right wing and you're pro and they're pro immigration. That's crazy.
Oil supply, 20% of the world's oil supply. You have this. I think that the blockade by the United States of Iran and its commerce was a brilliant move.
And I agree with you on that. Yes. America would not be anything without our immigrants, especially. And I'm sure in Spain it's the same. Moroccans, North Africans, right? Because, yeah, makes sense. Better times.
And a losing hand. I think that the war has gone not the way anyone in the United States side wanted it to.
And the thing for Europe especially is none of the immigrant issue is going to go away. Like, you can't go, okay, magically, we don't accept any immigrants. There's still going to be immigrants dying in boats. It's like, you can't have 50 boats of immigrants dying offshore. So there's going to be a forced scenario eventually.
It's been bloodier, more prolonged, seemingly more pointless, has no end in sight. But now that you have this situation in the strait.
But also remember, as he left us, you can say most of what's happening in Africa and the reason the immigrants are coming is because of America. It's because of Americans' neoliberal capitalism and spreading democracy for, 70, 80 years, 90 years now, 200 years. Like, even continuing Spain's colonial bullshit. Like you know what I mean? Like we never really stopped doing that. Right, America? We never stopped being colonial.
In the Persian Gulf
democracy's
generally.
good, sure.
I think that the American blockade of Iran is more impactful than the Iranian blockade, even though they are stopping the world's oil supply.
But if America has been spreading democracy at the tip of a spear for 50 years, then those countries you're talking about should have been bootstrapped, picked up by their bootstraps already, and be, world economies, right?
I think what has to happen is what appears to be happening now with this Project Freedom, using as an excuse the humanitarian needs of the crews of all the vessels that have been stranded because of the Iranian blockade, using the fact they've been on these vessels now for many weeks with no end in sight.
What?
I think that the United States Navy has to be aggressive. And let's see. Iran says it has the Straits of Hormuz closed with.
Bro, they hit a ship today. Are you stupid?
Its drone.
Bro, I've been growing my mustache less time than you've been alive, and my mustache is still better than yours, Geraldo.
Drones and its small craft and etc. Let's test that. I think that once more into the breach. I think that the United States has to try and see whether or not Iran has the capacity to close the strait. I believe that a kinetic response to any actions against any neutral ship has to happen.
A kinetic response. We have to bomb. Yeah, let's spread some more democracy. Sounds great.
Has to be dramatic, has to be overwhelming, has to be soon, or we leave with our tail between our legs, Pierce.
Okay, I meant to mention earlier, forgive me, Deborah Lee, Conservative Minister, is also joining us. Deborah, nice to see you. Sorry, the eagle-eyed viewers would have seen 5 faces pop up and thought, who's the other one? So it's Deborah, welcome back. Anna Kasparian, welcome back to you. I want to play a clip from John Bolton, which is kind of summing up what a lot of people on his side of the argument are feeling right now. Let's take a look at this.
Okay, Ambassador, who is going to blink first here? How does this finish?
Well, it's anybody's guess at this point. I think the United States holds a great advantage here, but it hasn't finished the job that was started. My definition of finishing the job is ousting the regime in Tehran, but there are steps less than that that Trump could take, and I'm a little surprised that he hasn't done it. For example, if he were to use military force to open the Strait of Hormuz, which does not involve going back to the kinds of attacks we saw 3 or 4 weeks ago. If he could do that, but keep the blockade on Iranian oil shipments, that would continue to put a huge financial squeeze on Iran, but would get a lot of much-needed oil out of the Gulf and into international markets.
Bro, you're assuming a lot by saying he can do that.
I think that is certainly something he can do to up the pressure, keep things moving, and avoid having to make some of the choices he clearly doesn't want to make and shouldn't have to make.
I mean, Anna, this comes on the backdrop, as I discussed with Megyn Kelly, where, you've got the Israelis itching to get back into fighting in Iran. They're making
the Israelis want to fight. They want to take out fucking they take whole Lebanon if they could.
There are conflicting agendas at play here. Trump getting a lot of pressure from all sides. A lot of people wanting to end this right now. Over 60% of Americans are not supportive of this war in Iran. Unprecedented negative numbers for a military conflict like this. What do you make of where we are, and what do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I think that the only way to secure the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, so you have transit of incredibly important cargo, including, energy supply that the globe needs, is to do so diplomatically. If there were a military option to do so, I believe that military option would have been used already, but we don't have that military option.
Exactly.
Just to give you a comparison.
There is no point where I think that if Trump had the option where he thinks he could even win it all. And the fact that he went in the first place and he listened to someone that said he could win is proof that if someone was in his head talking and saying, yeah, we can win, he would go for it if there was any way to win. And there isn't.
When the United States was at the height of the war in Iraq, we had about 250,000 soldiers dedicated to that war. Right now we have 10 to 15,000 military personnel. We're not even talking about the entire, number of troops being in combat or even able to engage in combat in the Middle East right now as we speak. So the point that I'm trying to make is there is no military option. When you look at the military weaponry we have, when you look at our THAAD missile interceptor system and the fact that we've depleted 80% of our missile interceptors, that puts our troops at a significant disadvantage. And I'm not the one saying this.
It does.
The Wall Street Journal reported very specific details about how much of our weaponry and interceptors have been depleted already. And we do not have the manufacturing capacity to build quick enough in order to basically withstand the very cheap drones that Iran is able to quickly produce. So the point that I'm trying to make here, Pierce, is that you have to reach an agreement diplomatically, and leaders lead, meaning that President Donald Trump has the leverage, has the power to force this in a diplomatic fashion. He just needs to basically push Israel aside and actually be a leader, not have Israel, dictate our foreign policy.
Curtis Sliwa, welcome to you to Uncensored. You're a former Republican candidate for mayor of New York, and I should just say at this point, my thoughts go out to Rudy Giuliani, former mayor of New York, and to his family. He's in critical condition in hospital, which was very sad news in the last few days. And I interviewed him actually on Uncensored only 2 weeks ago. So my best wishes to him and his family, and I hope he comes through that. But in terms of this war, a lot of Republicans I've been talking to are now having serious doubts about this. The longer it goes on, we were assured it was going to be over in 2 to 3 weeks, then 6 weeks. And now here we are over 2 months into this with no sign of it coming to any end anytime soon. And the obvious economic damage it's causing with gas prices and with inevitably food prices because of the loss of fertilizer that's being held up and so on. What do you make of it? Are you still supportive of this war? Do you think, as John Bolton does, that now you're in it, you've got to finish it and maybe trying to affect regime change as well?
Well, Pierce, I'm happy that you played John Bolton, who was the national security advisor for Trump in his first 4 years. Because remember, it was Bolton who barged into the president's office and said, Mr. President, you have to launch the Air Force because the Iranians just shot down a very expensive drone over the Straits of Hormuz. And the President Trump said, it's unmanned, right? Where's the proportionality? And Bolton wanted us to just bomb Iran. He's a war hawk. That's why I'm shocked that President Trump, who kept us out of these ongoing foreign disputes, did not get us involved, has suddenly flipped the script. And now he's war hawk number one. And we all know why. He's been pushed into this. Bibi, an excellent salesman, convinced him that if you come in with us, there will be regime change, there will be insurrection in the streets, even though our CIA and Marco Rubio told the president the next day after that meeting, that's not going to happen. And we see that Trump got bamboozled by Bibi. This is Bibi's war. We should not be involved in this.
Deborah Lee, are you supportive still of this war?
Well, first off, this is obviously not Bibi's war. Let's not throw Trump. Trump is a sovereign leader of the United States of America. He's our president. All of his decisions are his own. There's nobody who can bully him into a war. Every decision he makes, even the bad ones, are because he solely wanted to do them. As far as this war, as somebody who has wanted to see the end of the Iranian regime or the Islamic Iranian regime for a very long time, since childhood, growing up around Jews who fled from Iran very young, I'm kind of surprised that the war is still going on at this point. And as far as Anna said earlier, diplomatically, ideally, this would be a diplomatic exit. But a big challenge that we've seen, I can't attest to the exact numbers, but they prepared for this exact situation. There are factions split across the entire country. So even if the United States were to make a deal with somebody in Tehran, there could be a separate faction up in the north or in the south or somewhere that would challenge a diplomatic exit that would really create safety for the entire region. So at this point, I never thought that they were actually going to go after the Ayatollah. That was shocking for me. I didn't think that the United States of America would really take that chance, not knowing that we can guarantee regime change. Would I love regime change? Absolutely. Do I see a clear off-ramp for this war? Absolutely not. But we cannot just surrender to Iran because simply with flights, I'm flying to Israel in a few weeks. If we tell Iran that at any point they launch ballistic missiles, they can shut down airfare for the entire Middle East, can take complete control of the Strait of Hormuz, that is a dangerous position to leave them in. So I think we're at a really unfortunate time, but that's why I trust the leadership that I voted for in this administration. I trust them to get out of this in the best way possible. And at the very least, if we do get out without no more additional changes, it was avenging the close to 1,000 Americans who've been murdered by the Islamic regime over the last 47 years. So it wouldn't be a total loss.
But, when you say you trust this administration, okay, but you voted for them, and Donald Trump couldn't have been clearer when he campaigned to be president in 2024. He was not going to take America into any more of these Middle Eastern wars. And then within a year or so, he's gone into the biggest one imaginable. And we've all seen the consequences.
Well, President Trump has also been very clear that he will not allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. And Iran is committed to a nuclear weapon. I know we destroyed a lot of their weaponry last June. That was miraculous. But at the same time, they're not going to stop building. They're not going to stop enriching uranium. We saw this with the Obama-Iran nuclear deal, which is horrible. They are committed to building nuclear weapons and trying to destroy the western part of this world
With everything that they got, they will divert every resource to try and destroy Western civilization. And so I'm not surprised that we need to keep our, for lack of a better word, our knee on their necks to make sure that they are not trying to destroy the world that we know and love.
Yeah, I'm just not quite sure whose knee is on whose neck at the moment, because it looks to me like, as I've been saying regularly, there's an asymmetric war going on. One is the military conflict, which America and Israel have overwhelming superiority, and I don't doubt for a moment they've caused enormous damage to Iran's military. But there's also the economic war being waged around this Strait of Hormuz, which has enormous global consequences, as we're seeing. And at the moment, that strait remains shut, despite all the protestation and late-night rage tweets from the president. There seems to be very little he can do to get it open again. Let me bring in Adam Mockler. Welcome to Uncensored, Adam. You've obviously hit the headlines in the last few days. For those who haven't seen it, I think it's up there with my Russell Brand clip as the two most memed and republished clips of the week. So let's take a look at your one. This is you with Scott Jennings at CNN.
I mean, honestly, they have been at war with us for 47 years.
We all know that Scott Jennings is more than happy to defend a war with a country that starts with the letters IRA that we are currently failing, that is going to put us trillions and trillions of dollars more in debt. I was only a few years old while you were in the administration defending prior endless wars. Now this war is failing.
8 weeks is endless to you?
Okay, you said it was going to be 4 to 6 weeks.
You have the attention span of a gnat?
Homie, I debated you on TV 4 to 6 weeks ago, and you said we were weeks away from it. Now you're making condescending remarks because you can't defend the fact that this war is not going your way. Wait, one more time.
Not going your way.
One political concession. Name one political concession.
Whoa, honestly, I'm not going to have this guy's name on my face.
Everybody, hang tight.
Honestly.
Okay. No, everybody, calm down. Okay.
Now, as somebody who was repeatedly actually manhandled by Russell Brand, I think your manhandling was at least a little bit removed. There was daylight between your arms and Scott Jennings. But what was interesting about the exchange to me was not that he was not entitled to get annoyed with the way you were gesticulating. I probably would have done too. But I've not seen him that rattled. Scott Jennings is normally ice cool on that panel show. I watch it a lot. I think he's a really interesting commentator for the right on CNN. It's an unusual beast. They don't have many of them. And he holds his own often against 3 or 4 people. And on this occasion, Geraldo was also on the panel, I noted. And we'll come to Geraldo for his view of it in a minute. But I haven't seen Scott Jennings react like that to anybody. And that, to me, in the same way that I'm seeing with Donald Trump's slightly erratic and, quite angry and testy social media activity in the last few weeks, it just looks to me like people that have gone all in on this war in Iran, now it's not playing out in any way that they predicted or told everybody that it was going to play out. They're getting testy. They're getting quite angry about it, which is a natural human reaction, but is increasingly obvious. And I thought your exchange with Scott was indicative of that. What did you think?
I don't want to take away from the point that I was making in the question that I was asking in that moment, because I have sat on panel after panel after panel with Scott Jennings as he lies about this war, not bound by any facts whatsoever, as he makes failed predictions, not bound by any timelines whatsoever, and as he condescends and trolls and provokes everyone else on the panel. I mean, even in the same panel, he made fun of my bedtime like 5 minutes earlier. So this is a man that's not bound by any facts or timelines or rules. So I said, I'm not going to be bound by rules that my opponent is not playing it. So you can say that I was gesticulating a bit too much. That's a fair criticism, but he could have politely asked me to tone it down. That is not what he did. He snapped because he realized he does not have an answer to the simple question, name one political concession we've gotten from Iran 60 days into this war. We've had moving, shifting timelines, shifting objectives for this war. They've been lowering the threshold for what victory is considered as. And just because I asked the question of, hey, what concessions have we gotten, that pisses him off. We've seen billions of dollars spent. We saw dozens of people, thousands of people in Iran have died, tens of thousands, but we saw over a dozen U.S. soldiers die. So I'm going to continue to ask this very same question. What political concessions have we gotten from Iran 60 days into this war? The answer is absolutely none, and he knows the answer is none. That's why he freaked out.
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable...
Don't apologize.
No,
don't apologize for your
I don't think you shouldn't be apologising. No, I mean, let me bring Geraldo in firstly, because Geraldo, you were on the panel. I want to play your reaction on News Nation to what you saw on that panel.
The kid was a dick. I mean, he smart, eloquent, had his argument together, had obviously debated Scott before, and he was really being a dick. I mean, it was shut up, go out and get some life experience.
How many different... I wasn't sure if you were talking about Chris Cuomo there, actually, Geraldo. I had to clarify you were talking actually about Adam Mockler. Now,
you still think so?
Well, Adam, I mean, what do you want to say to Geraldo? He called you a dick. Do you have a response?
Yeah, it's not a dick to try to force a critical question and try to force the conversation to where the American people want it. Geraldo, you were there when Scott made fun of my bedtime 5 minutes earlier. Again, this is somebody not bound by any rules whatsoever on this show. He's able to lie over and over. Why should I be bound by some decorum that my opponents aren't bound by? Do you see what I'm saying? It's not the 80s anymore. It's not even 2010 anymore. We are in a new era where we are playing in a reciprocal manner. So I'm not playing the games where I have to be nice. And regarding life experience, really quickly, you have a whole life of experience and you're on the same panels as me. We're on the same shows. We have a show last week. We have a show today. So life experience, what has it gotten you? I don't know.
All right, Geraldo, your life experience has got you nowhere, says the young dick.
Well, it's gotten me a career that's lasted 56 years so far and counting, and aside from 10 Emmys and a few other trinkets.
And now you're on the same panels
Adam, listen, don't be wise, okay? I said to you in the commercial break that immediately followed your confrontation with Scott, that I thought that you made some good points. The problem is that you can be very obnoxious in your presentation. Now, sometimes being obnoxious can lead to a whole career. But I advise you strongly, because you're a smart kid and you obviously prepared, for the debate. Stick to that.
6, 7 plus 20, you got it.
Because I think that you do have a future. In terms of Scott Jennings, I like Scott very much. I didn't know him before this CNN experience. It was fun talking to him in the green room before the show, and then see the confrontation, this spontaneous combustion. I was surprised. I was surprised by the fact that Scott reacted as he did. But then, just listening to Adam.
But your first reaction was to call him a dick.
Very grating,
right?
And sometimes that works. I remember Morton Downey and a bunch of others from daytime TV and so forth. But I strongly advise you to stick to the substance, because you can, as I indicated in the commercial break following the confrontation, you can be a voice for a generation that has so far been unable to penetrate into the mainstream media.
He got Scott Jennings.
This is so indicative of the double standards that we see all throughout the media. I mean, you went on that whole rant, but you didn't mention that Scott Jennings made fun of my bedtime or whatever. Not that I care, but he's the one who has an obnoxious air.
What did he say about your bedtime? I missed that.
So I asked him a question 5 minutes before. I said, hey, what concession has Iran gotten? And he says, aren't you a little bit up past your bedtime or something? He started with the condescending jabs.
To be fair, Adam, you are literally beaming into the show from your bedroom.
It's a hotel room. I'm currently at a hotel room. I mean, either way.
It's not the best way to refute the suggestion that it's past your bedtime.
What are you talking about? I'm in a hotel room in New York because I have CNN again tonight.
Adam, it's a joke. You're reacting a bit. You're reacting a bit like Scott did the other day. So take a chill pill. You happen to have a bed behind you as you're refuting the charge that it's past your bedtime. I'm just making a joke.
It's a good joke. One final thing. I'm 23. Maybe my youthful arrogance will drop with time, but there's no excuse for Scott Jennings to be on air all the time, making remarks at everybody else. And then the moment somebody gives it back, he can dish it, but he can't take it. The moment somebody tries to force the question, what political concession have we gotten from Iran? He gets worked up. So yeah.
Well, okay. I don't know Scott Jennings at all. I never met him. I think he's a very effective communicator on a network, CNN, that when I was there was very, very, very cautious about revealing any kind of partisan bias, but now has a panel show where quite often on that show they have four on one side and Scott Jennings. So I actually feel like he puts up a pretty good fight, given he's often heavily outnumbered. But Anna, on a sort of slightly wider point here, it's very interesting to me. I just interviewed Megyn Kelly for 20 minutes at the start of this show. And I could have been talking to you about some of these issues, right? Same with Tucker Carlson. A lot of you have blended now into a weird family of people who have a lot of agreement about a lot of things. Iran, the influence of Israel, Donald Trump and his mistake as you see it and so on. Did you think a time would come when you would be siding rhetorically on these big, big issues with so many who are on the conservative right? And what does that tell you about the state of the conservative right when you've got people like Mark Levin saying Tucker's mentally ill, everyone trashing Candace Owens and her trashing everybody else? There is a real split going on the conservative right. And there's you firmly on the left as you've always been, but now siding rhetorically, to me, it seems, on these big issues with people that would historically have been the complete opposite to you.
I'm going to get back to your question in just one second, but I have to say the debate about tone is the exact type of distraction that Zionists are hoping for, so you don't actually debate the substance.
Correct.
Mockler, your tone was fine. Your hand was nowhere near his face.
He's so
you have
boring.
no reason to apologize.
He's like,
the reason why they're attacking
on,
your
mate.
tone is because they can't attack your substance. Now, moving on to Pierce's question.
Somehow blame Zionists for that? That's mental illness, but okay.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Oh, you're calling me mentally ill? Do you want to go there? Do you want to go there?
What does blaming Zionists have to
just
do with?
I'm not talking to you. I'm going to answer Pierce's
viral-
question calmly and not let you bait me because that's what you guys
I hope
do.
you
but
can.
Pierce, to answer your
I hope you
question,
can.
I think that right now it's not really a question of left versus right on this issue. It's a question of good versus evil,
Alex
America
Jones.
first versus a foreign country first. And right now, this war is something that
That's right, mate. It's Alex Jones. It's right. That's right. I'm the fucking UK version of Alex. They call me Alex Jones. Right, mate.
as Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, has said repeatedly.
Right, mate. The fucking king. He's a known pedophile and a reptilian.
Has been a dream of his for decades. And he finally got his dream to the detriment of the American people, since we're the ones paying for this war. We're the ones who lost 13 soldiers as a result of this war, and we shouldn't be fighting it. And so I think Tucker, I think Megyn Kelly, I think people like me and Cenk, regardless of our political views overall, look at this war, look at the undue influence of Israel over our government and foreign policy, and we have a problem.
Yeah, and it's an easy W to say, I'm anti-war.
With that. We are America first. We have some very real problems here within our own borders that are not being addressed at all, even though President Trump alleged that he was going to address those issues. And in fact, the very issues that people voted for him on, including doing something about affordability, he has only made worse by agreeing to enter this war. So I think that's what's going on, why there's a little bit of agreement when it comes to big picture issues, like whether or not our leadership is America first, whether or not our foreign policy is serving us, and whether or not we really want to continue this alliance with a country that has only sucked our resources and forced us into wars that we shouldn't be fighting.
We are.
Okay, Deborah Lee, what was the point you were trying to make?
Are you still questioning it? What?
At the beginning, she referenced that this is Zionist distraction to talk about tone, and I was just pointing out that to blame Zionists for pointing out the tone when this was a very viral interaction between Adam and Scott, a lot of people had a lot of opinions. That's the kind of mental illness that we ascribe to anti-Semitism, where it rots your brain and you start seeing these connections where they come from nowhere. And something very worth mentioning is somebody who's very passionate about making sure that Republicans win in this country for the midterms. If we stop this war tomorrow, that would really not move the needle for the Republican Party in terms of the midterms. And the biggest reason is because we have these rogue liberal activist judges who consistently overturn every single win from the Trump administration. And so until we rein back these activist judges in our country and assure we can actually have the long-lasting wins that we voted for lasting in this country, that is the biggest challenge for the midterms. Americans are not feeling the
honestly, I don't think that's going to be the problem. I think the problem for the midterms is going to be if this war drags on with all the economic havoc it's causing, then what's going to happen is that regular Americans are going to look at two promises Donald Trump made: not to drag America into pointless, expensive Middle Eastern wars, and to focus on America first and getting the cost of living down. And if neither of those things have been achieved, in fact, the complete opposite has happened, then I suspect the Republicans are in for an absolute shellacking in November. Now, there's still time to rectify this. But every week that goes by with this war is another week,
it's a
which is
fucking
longer than we were told
shellacking.
this was all going to last. And I'm looking at the prices
with max
of gas
poison
prices,
and speed, mate.
the inevitable
The fucking liberal judges are going to take
prices.
out all the conservative judges. They're going to constrain their ability. What the fuck are they even talking about? What is she talking about?
That's going to come because of the fertilizer issue and so on. It's all bad news for Trump.
Right,
His approval rating is at a record low. He should just get out of this
fucking
thing.
nappy, mate.
I just want to come to you, Curtis, if I may, about something completely different.
That's right.
Because there was another big event last week where my king and queen came to your great country.
My king and queen? Bro. So cucked by the king and queen. I love my pedophile king and queen. They do such nice nuncery.
And you said this.
Oh, total agreement with him. Because I was in India. This was about 15 years ago, and I met with historians there. They stole all the artifacts.
I know everything about everything. That's right, because I got the red cat on. Hat on. Not cat. Yeah, that's right.
It's not just in India, all over the world.
Hey, you know, India. I was once in India. I had this hash. That stuff was...
They refuse to give it back. So they have the king and the queen, you know, the royalty. They're a bunch of deadbeats, slackers, the worst welfare cheats in the world. So the countries ask, you know, could we have our artifacts back? And they say no. Meantime, India, they had 2 million volunteers join the king's army in World War II to defend the crown. 100,000 casualties, many more injured. I think the least that the royal family, the royal stiffs could do is not stiff the Indian people, but they do it, and they don't think twice about it. And they should have met with the Epstein victims.
So a stinging attack on my monarch and his wife there. This is about the Koh-i-Noor diamond, which is an ongoing argument and dispute. It dates back several hundred years, and I'm not going to get into that particular argument. But when you call King Charles a slacker, Curtis, I just wanted to point something out to you. King Charles is 77. I believe you're a very robust 72. So he's 5 years older than you. He was diagnosed with cancer in February 2024 and is still having regular treatment for this cancer.
The sharp ones can
and
be
yet
tacky,
in 2025, he conducted 390 solo engagements and 488 solo and joint engagements. Slacker? Really? My king? A slacker? He's the hardest working cancer patient in the world.
Let me get the small violin out. I had stage 4 prostate cancer. I was shot 5 times with hollow point bullets on the orders of the Gaudis to the Gambinos. I'm out there every day.
The Gaudis and the Gambinos.
When your king and your queen came to lay the flowers at the memorial at 9/11, which was good, not only for all the Americans lost, 3,000, but the 69 Brits. Just a block away is the memorial to the Irish famine, where your royalty was responsible for the killing of 1 million Irish. Up the rebels, Easter Rising, John Connolly. Your Queen Victoria did this, and your royalty never apologized for the death of 1 million Irish. You have a lot. Your royalty has a lot to apologize for.
Hell yeah.
And do your leaders have a blameless record going back 250 years, Curtis? Or should I start slinging my arrows back your way for some of the transgressions of the past?
No, you can. You can. Because I don't believe in idolatry. I question authority. I am a Republican who constantly questions the authority of Donald Trump. You see, here in America, we have total free speech. And the answer to hate speech is more free speech. But in England, you don't have complete free speech. And you know what I'm talking about, Piers.
Well, we have issues with free speech, particularly on social media, which I'm very concerned about. I agree with you. You know, we've had some ridiculous cases where people have cracked jokes, inappropriate, tasteless jokes on social media, and then get arrested by 5 armed policemen at Heathrow Airport and charged with crimes. It's ridiculous.
Sounds like nuncery to me.
Can I reach my hands across the pond? You keep the king and the queen there. We'll keep Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse here.
Too bad she's
because
a repub,
that's
right?
your Disney World. The king and the queen.
Zionist.
Geraldo, I actually I was in New York last week, and I actually really like the fact that after a lot of Brit bashing from Trump aimed at Keir Starmer, who's been a pretty useless prime minister, I have to be honest, of my country, following a lot of other useless prime ministers in recent years, that after all the Brit bashing, some of it deserves, some over the top, we finally had a reminder that actually there is a very historic and abiding and genuinely special relationship between our two great countries. What did you feel about it? Was it significant to you at all, or not really?
I thought that the royal family, the royal couple anyway, the king and queen, did a magnificent job. The king's speech before the Joint Chamber of Congress was brilliant. I thought that here he was, in a hostile environment where the relationship between the secular British government and the United States is horrible. Britain and the United States, historic allies, I've had this awful divorce, mainly over what's going on in Iran and the Persian Gulf. But the king came, despite the bitter feelings between the British government and the American government, the king came and made a speech that reminded Americans of what our democracy is all about. Reminded Americans that we have elected representatives, that there's a separation between the legislative branch and the executive branch, that
especially
there is power in America's founding documents and our government structure
and peers,
as long as each branch allows the other to do its constitutionally mandated job. It took the King of England, ironically, they took the king to teach Americans what our democracy was about, what separation of powers is about. And I was enormously impressed by his sincerity. I thought that his speech really resonated with many people who were
That's right, his puffy hand was on full display, mate. You could see his puffery, his pufficence, as we call him. Like
political.
the pontiff.
I really believe that he
his
was,
puffiness.
In my view, this was the most impressive visit by a royal
plus.
ever.
God, he's got to be 80.
In my certainly 80. In my adult lifetime. I thought Charles was brilliant, and I was never a huge fan of his. Of course, I was Princess Diana and all that, but to see Charles, kind of a stiff, generally was as he was regarded, come and make such a clever speech, so brilliantly delivered,
Everyone called him a
connecting
stiff.
not only with the joint, he gets standing ovation from Republican and Democrat standing together, an ovation in Congress. You would never get that from an American president standing before the American Congress, but there was King Charles. Standing ovation, not a seat.
He was best off when he was doing that stupid TV show. What was it?
In the whole room, and he dominated, and then graciously went to Harlem,
right?
Was with the kids there. Remember.
Yeah, bye. All right, Chattis. That's all you got for me tonight, mate. I'm gonna go out and milk the fucking cows. That's right. I'm kidding. All good. No, yeah, he's all good. He's just made a career out of, like I said in the beginning, he made a career out of being the dumbest motherfucker. Hasta mañana. It'll be Tuesday tomorrow. That's right. All right. Thanks for hanging out. Hopefully see you tomorrow.